Scott, we're just about to call the meeting to order. Can you hear us? We can't hear you, but I see you waving, so I know that at least you've got us.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Okay, good.
All right. All right, that's 7 o'clock, but I do hear some feedback. So let's get. All right, are we ready to go down? So that thumbs up, we're ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, City of Newberry is bringing you this regularly scheduled commission meeting of January 25th in a hybrid fashion. We have some folks, staff included, zooming in. Commissioner Monty Farnsworth is zooming in. We have some residents zooming in. And we also have some live residents here in the chamber. It's good to see you guys back. Thank you all for joining us. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda today, I think, is someone locked outside there, Travis? One side is locked. Before we ask for an approval of the agenda today, we wanted to take a moment and let the family of the young man who just perished in an accident know that we're with him. So I'd ask you if you could all just join me in a moment of silence for Mr. Joe Griffin. Thank you all. We appreciate that. And our hearts are with the family. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family. I have been talking to Newberry High School. That is the third young man that we've lost in a little bit over a year in an automobile accident. So we'll see if there's any programs we can run, any assistance that we can offer that might be helpful. And with that, I would like to ask for an approval of the agenda. I have no modifications to the agenda. I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Are there any questions or comment from the dais on the motion on the floor? If not, Dallas, I'll put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just opened the meeting tonight. I have a motion properly second on the floor to approve the agenda with no changes or amendments added to it. If you feel like something has not made it onto the agenda that's supposed to be there, or something's on the agenda that you think should be pulled off, now would be the appropriate time to let us know. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number that's on your screen. That will get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, we'll make sure you have the opportunity to address the commission with those comments. We're going to begin with live comment, and then we'll take virtual comments. Anyone live in the chamber here tonight have any problems with the motion on the floor? Thoughts? Okay, Dallas, do we have any virtual members with their hand raised? Okay, thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Farnsworth. How do you vote? I saw you say aye, but I didn't hear it.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Norfleet? Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I should note also that Commissioner Coleman is still struggling, so we'll continue with him in our thoughts and prayers tonight. We'll welcome him back to the dais soon. And just on a side note, those of you know our rules of procedure state that we can miss 3 commission meetings, and then the commission has to accept the reason for the absence. So at our next commission meeting, we will be looking for one of you to make a motion to excuse those absences. So we have a motion probably seconded. Everybody voted yes. I'd like to welcome not Pastor, Reverend Joy Glanzer to the podium to give tonight's invocation. If you would please rise for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance that will follow immediately after. And Reverend Glanzer, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, in these challenging times, we're here to do the work to make our city safe, whole, and in thy favor. We're so very blessed to live, work, and play here in Newberry. And tonight we pray you impart wisdom upon our commissioners that they may see clearly, act wisely, and make decisions that will continue to make our city shine and to be a beacon to all those who hear. Lord, we pray for our citizens who have suffered in the pandemic and who have lost loved ones. May they find comfort. Watch over our beloved Commissioner Coleman, that he will have full and complete healing from the virus. His empty seat here tonight reminds us how vulnerable we all are. Give his family the strength and faith to get through this. Lord, bless the people who selflessly serve our city, elected officials, staff, and employees. May your divine light illuminate the path to make our city an example of what the very best looks like when acting in thy name. And it's in thy name, precious name, we pray tonight. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Glandon, for those beautiful words. All right, we will move to presentations. We have two tonight. First, we'd like to recognize an employee for completing a certificate program. Mr. New, are you going to take the lead on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will. Actually, it's an exciting opportunity. So it's a presentation that I get to take the lead on. I'm excited about that. There is a Society of Human Resources Management. Did not know that, but apparently they're very serious about improving expertise in the field of human resources. And as we all know, it's a very complex field, highly litigious, and it takes a lot of skill and experience to navigate in human resources and treat our staff appropriately and protect the city from certain liabilities. Dallas Lee has taken on a certification program within the Society of Human Resources Management. It's called Certified Professional. It's a pretty intensive study. It's not a one-day course that you sign up for or a couple seminars one afternoon. There's a lot of book work. It probably takes several months to get through, pass the certification exam. And with those credentials, it affirms that Dallas has mastered technical human resources knowledge and has the ability to effectively apply this knowledge in the workplace. Just want to publicly applaud Dallas for taking the initiative. None of this happened during work hours. This was all in the evenings. He's also a full-time student at UF, finishing up on his degree there. He managed to work this thing in. These are the types of things that, you know, I see with some frequencies with staff, but this is definitely going above and beyond. And I just want to share with the commission and the community the type of staff that we have. And that's what makes us such a great place to work and a great team to serve the community that we work for. So congratulations, Dallas, and thank you for the extra effort.
Well done, sir. Full-time student, full-time employee, find time, extra time to go after more certifications. So clearly you can handle more. That's what I'm hearing here. So now the certification's done. I mean, well done, sir. And I just want to echo Mr. New's thoughts. It does bode well for the city when we have employees that go the extra mile like you. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for always making us look good. Okay, and now we have our second presentation, which is an update on the Easton Newberry Sports Complex Master Plan. This is an idea that all you guys have asked for, pushed for, voted in favor of. Here we have an update. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for coming and telling us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. It is a pleasure to be back up here. It's been a while. I am here to present the Easton Newberry Sports Complex Master Plan. It's something that we have been working on for quite some time in an effort to maximize our space out there at Easton. And as we continue to grow, we want to make sure that we have everything adequately placed and in its best space. Recommended action is just to receive the presentation and provide feedback. Okay, thank you. It has. I actually turned it on earlier and then I turned it off.
It's not really fair that Dallas is a certified professional.
Oh, God. Anyhow, funding background, just as a reminder, as we go through here, you'll see a lot of projects on there. And the question sometimes is, well, where are we going to get the funding for this? So Wild Spaces Public Places was a 2016 half-cent sales tax. And Newberry, the current estimate is 3.2 million, with 1.325 going to Canterbury, which was a large chunk. Of that 3.2, 400,000 was allocated by Alachua County to build the multi-purpose fields. So right now we're looking at around 1.9 million for the Newberry projects. Some of the projects that you guys will see, you each have a handout because when we look at it on the screen, it's going to be difficult to tell. But we purchased some land at Easton, 10 acres, 2 separate parcels, multi-purpose fields. Really looking forward to those. We have 2 planned with a third that you can see on there as future. That will include the utility and drainage infrastructure, irrigation well system, sports lighting, all the stuff needed to have 2 really nice sports fields. Interior roads and paving improvements, something that we definitely need out there. We'll have roads throughout, sidewalks, a parking area, lighting, etc. We've already completed the batting cages. We're going to do RC park renovations, improve our maintenance area, and then a laser tag pavilion. This is the plan. This is the overview of the plan. You'll see a large chunk of it is laser tag area, which would be on the north, which is the darker brown. This is actually turned sideways. If you'll notice, the right side of what you're looking at is north. And to the east of that is the archery area. You'll see in between there is the well field. South of the archery area, you'll see the 3 multi-purpose fields. And then what you'll see is located further south is the RC park where we relocated it, and parking, drive aisles, all those things that are necessary to make a park a beautiful place.
Travis, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Is the baseball facility just not on this, and the Easton facility there? It's west of the sports field, the single sports field, which is down this way.
It's there. It's straight opposite of the RC park, the brown one next to the stormwater management.
Oh, I see. Baseball training facility.
Yep. Pro ball is there. There's a little parking area just south of it.
Okay. I'm oriented completely wrong on this. All right.
This view actually gives you the look if you're just going north. You see future gym, which is something that down the road would be nice to us because we're currently, as our programs continue to grow, I mean, we're getting close to filling up a gym. Between sports practices, volleyball, basketball, it gets really hectic in there.
Where's the astronomy club meeting now?
The astronomy club, if you can see right, they haven't moved. Yep, they are located right there.
Star Park?
The Star Park.
Okay.
Any other questions you guys can think of?
How many sports fields we have 2 there now, and
We actually have
adding
3.
one?
We have 2 fields on the north.
Right.
You can see
No, I mean, not in the proposed, but right now.
right now we have
We
2
still
on the
have
north
3.
above the 2 small baseball fields, which are actually softball fields. And then you'll see on the far south, you'll see another
See one
soccer
there.
field. Yep.
So which are the fields that the county's money is helping us? Are those the proposed fields?
They are the
They're
proposed.
so those are proposed, but will happen.
Correct.
Okay. I'm the only questions. Keep on going.
This is just some photos from the batting cage project out at Easton. This has already been completed. It's just an example of the things that we're looking to do. This is right there behind the building. So if you guys want to go out and take a peek at it, it's really nice. We're getting a lot of people utilizing it. A lot of folks coming out for training and such. And it gives us the ability to, whenever we're having a load down on our fields, we can have teams go in there and they can have a full practice in there. It gives us a little bit more availability. Any questions
Guys, have any questions?
or feedback?
Commissioner Martin?
So where the proposed fields are at, sports field. That's actually going to require some of the timber removal, right?
Correct.
And where is, I know the laser tag was in this building here. They're staying in this building, or they're going to relocate, or what do they want to do?
They're currently in that building, and what we want to do is move them. If you'll notice, in their laser tag area, you see one small building right there where Dallas is circling it. There's the restrooms, and we're going to have a pavilion there for them to, basically all they need is a restroom and then a pavilion for them to be able to have birthday parties and such. So ideally, we would move their area strictly to that spot. And mainly because when archery has large events, they also hold those 2 football fields that we have that are already existing, and they're crossing paths.
Yeah, that was an issue, Rich, from it.
Mhm. Football fields. They're basically multi-purpose. They can be football, soccer, lacrosse. They're large enough to hold anything that we'd like.
When do we start talking about construction and all that kind of stuff?
So currently, right now, we're working on getting the stormwater retention done. So we've got LiDAR data that we have gotten over to EDA to look at, and then basically turn it over to Allison Fettner, who will then turn it into a topographic map. And then we'll start proceeding from there with bids for the projects.
Commissioner Farnsworth, just wave your hand if you got a question.
I would say that 2021, we're looking at potentially getting, well, we would get the stormwater retention done, we'd get the topographic map, and then we would look at starting the bid process for three different items, potentially. The roads, infrastructure, stormwater, and then the multi-purpose fields.
Travis, let's say hypothetically a subdivision comes in and wants to build around Easton, and they were to approach what your regulations require. We build a playground. Let's just give you money and you build it at Easton. Are we able to implement that inside this master plan, or would that be something that we need to consider before we engineer this out?
I think that a play structure, we could easily find a location for it. I don't think, I mean, this is a plan, but it's not.
Not said, no.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to say it is fairly large.
Have you got your mic on, Commissioner Clark?
I wanted to say 30.
30 acres. What do they have inside there for them to just stuff to get behind?
Just
For
stuff,
30
just some small structures that they use to play laser tag.
Play wolf. Yeah. So I was saying though, but you were talking about that subdivision. If you needed a piece, you could go down in that corner and make a fairly nice playground without interrupting much of that.
Just with regards to a lot of the questions that's been coming out, I've probably had more conversations with the developer. The housing development, Avalon Woods, that was recently approved, at least phase 1A was approved for construction by the city commission. They have expressed intent to extend gravity sewer to this new restroom that is proposed for laser tag. So that it won't be with this phase, it'll be one of their subsequent phases, but they've made a commitment. They'll also have a sidewalk extending through there to connect their subdivision to the park and the roadway infrastructure of the park. They have, the Water Management District has contacted us and they've indicated their intent to thin the pines, which is going to be very disruptive for about a 6-month period of time. They will get them out in a month, but they want all activities shut down during the bid period. They are very concerned that they're not going to get bidders. They're very concerned that the structures in the laser tag area will discourage bidders. So we have to shut it down, remove all the structures, both from the laser tag area and the field archery area. They'll bid it. So it looks like that is something that's going to happen late summer or fall is when all that would happen. They're going to clear cut the area down here where the proposed multi-purpose fields are. They'll clear cut it so that timber won't be an issue in the development of those fields. De-stumping will be, but they'll get the timber out of there. So a lot of different things going on. The developer, the hypothetical that the mayor threw out there was just amazingly insightful. That developer has actually, not hypothetically, proposed that. Of course, staff indicated that we'll make that presentation to the commission at the appropriate time. That development is a mixed-use development, and they're required to provide a certain amount of recreational area. And after looking at the site, we bought 10 acres. You'll remember a year or so ago, we bought 10 acres out of their development, out of the property that was in that mixed-use development. So they were looking around and said, hey, we're supposed to create recreation space. There's a nice recreation center. If we spent, something north of $30,000 on a nice playground, would the commission consider that in lieu of developing recreation on our thing? And so that's a future question. That's for when they move south of the entrance road, but that is part of their master development plan and part of their ask of the commission at the appropriate time.
Okay, do we have any other questions about the master plan?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Norfleet?
on the pine thinning, are they gonna clear cut the archery field that you got on there and just thin out where the laser tag is? How thin are they gonna thin the trees?
They titled it as a fourth row removal, and then they're going to thin all the poor quality trees in between. And they indicate that means that 20% of the trees that are there will remain, and every fourth row will be a blazing trail.
For that laser tag, will they leave the stumps in the ground for that?
Yes, they will. Any cleanup after the timbering will be left for the city to deal with. The next step, the city has approached them at y'all's direction, which transferring that property to us. And they came back with, well, we'll consider it. And their board, what they call the land committee, is going to consider it in March. But we, as staff, we recommend that the city pay us the value of the timber. And they said that's $100,000. And they also said the timber's in poor quality because it's too close together. We recommend that you thin it. And so we suggested, why don't you go ahead, do the thinning, get the value of the timber so that then you won't feel like you need to ask the city for money when you transfer 60 acres to us. So that's the tentative direction we're moving with the Water Management District staff. Their board has not agreed to that, but that's the direction we're taking.
What would need to be done with the stumps that are left there if people are running through the woods there?
I think that's probably a conversation we would have with the laser tag people. They generally don't seem to have any problem with obstacles. There already is. I think, it becomes a bigger issue for those areas that we might want to have a little cleaner. But I think for laser tag, they would be fine with it. Although the laser tag people have said, if we have to move everything completely out, we're not so sure how interested we'd be in going back in. Seems like a lot of effort. Our position is well, the Water Management District gets to tell us absolutely that if they want the timber, we have to stand down and get out of their way. So let's plan on it now. We'll cross the bridge of whether you want to get back in there when it's over with or not, or whether additional cleanup needs to happen. I've just my personal observation of the cleanup that's going on the 130 acres around the site. When ag moves in and decides to change the nature of a site, they can make it look real pretty in no time flat. If you've been by there in the last week, that whole area is changing every day.
Okay. Commissioner, have any further questions? Commissioner Farnsworth? And I have one last question, maybe for you, Travis, or maybe Dallas. You said we've got 3.2 in wild spaces. That number seems a little bit higher than what I think was projected. Have those numbers gone up? $3.2 million so far.
Mr. Mayor, originally when the the second round of wild spaces was proposed, we used the original wild spaces funding to base those numbers off of, and I believe that came in right about 2 million. But once wild spaces was adopted, the state revised its estimates to us getting closer to $350,000 to $400,000 per year. Prior to 2020, we were hitting those numbers fairly easily. Even last year, though, with coronavirus, we still took in over $350,000 in a single year for wild spaces. We're about 4 years through that program now. We are about halfway to the $2.8 million we anticipated, with the other $400,000 being the grant from the county.
So the 3.2 we're projecting is if the numbers hold steady, or is
Yes,
that, am I
it's
not
if-
reading that bullet point right?
It is if the numbers hold steady, but we did not see that large of a decrease last year. We saw maybe a $25,000 drop from what
That was the main concern. I know in the last round of wild spaces, we ended up with, can't remember what, it was about $100,000 more than what our projections were. So I'm just curious if, because I anticipated that number to be south of our projections because of COVID. So even if they're maintaining, or they're a little bit better, that's great news.
We took a real hard look at the numbers again during this budget cycle, and the State Department of Economic Data and Research prepares funding estimates every year. They prepared this year's funding estimates, obviously with the COVID crisis ongoing, and our projection stayed fairly flat, which is good, as opposed to a decrease.
And it's a 7-year cycle for wild spaces.
It's an 8-year cycle. It's 2 general election cycles, 4 general election cycles. The other thing, in our wild spaces funding plan the commission adopted, there is a contingency fund built in of about $100,000 between projects and our funding. So if we do lose some money one year or another, we do have some cushion there.
Okay. Well, just make a note, since you got plenty of time, right? That in 3 years, bring it back to us, because the last time we ended up with a little bit more money, it caused political rift about what to do with that money. So we may want to be a little bit more on top of our game about what we, having that conversation in an extended way. So 3 years from now, set a calendar, reminder, and we'll see where we're at. Thank you, Amy. All right. Any other questions for Travis?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. We appreciate the update.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, I'd tell you that Travis is working on master plans for all of our parks that you should see throughout the year. You may see one at the next meeting, or at least in February. And other departments are developing their master plans as well. The commission, by the time we get through December, may be tired of seeing master plans and asking for a little relief from the city, from staff. So just to give you guys a heads up of what's coming down the pipeline.
We love to see these big concept projects moving forward. So thank you again, Travis. Okay, well, if there are no other questions there, we'll move to public announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, your commission likes to hear from you. We'd like to make sure that you have the opportunity to address us early in the meeting without having to wait until the end. So we set aside a time right after presentations for 2-minute announcements. If you have something going on in the community you'd like to let us know about, now would be a good time to do that. If you'd like to talk to the commission about something a little more controversial, a little more in depth, we set aside a longer period of time at the end of the meeting. You have 5 minutes at that point in time. So if you want to call in and let us know something is going on, just dial the phone number that's on the screen right now. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. That'll let us know that you'd like to address the commission. Click that hand symbol. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, and then we'll go to our virtual comment. Do we have any live public announcements from the dais? Now, is this Reverend Glanzer, Citizen Glanzer, or Main
Joy
Street
Glanzer.
President?
Actually, Main Street President, Newberry Main Street President organization. Anyway, I just want to remind everyone that every Saturday now we have the downtown Main Street Farmers Market. And every week it's getting bigger and better. And we're very pleased that it's been going on now. This will be our 3rd week, this coming up weekend. So thank you so much. Don't forget to come, 8 to 12 noon.
Who's the meat vendor that comes there?
Joel Searby is our manager, and he could tell
Quincy.
you, I can't remember.
Quincy. that's
Quincy
it, yeah.
meat. Oh my
Quincy
gosh, I've heard
meats.
such great things about him.
So good. So, Valentine's Day is coming up.
That's right.
If you want to swing by, get some steaks, You can also get fresh cut flowers there at the
Flowers,
farmer's market now.
bread,
Bring home
soaps,
some steaks and some flowers. Everybody wins.
oysters and clams.
Oysters
That's
and
right.
clams. And I asked that guy to put mullet dip on the menu.
Oh.
He said he would. If he
Work
does
on
that,
it.
I'll be there every Saturday.
Work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We've enjoyed it. Any other live comment? Come on down, sir. You got to come speaking to Mike. You even got to say your name. I'd say it for you, Mr. Tyrone Watson, but that's just cheating. Press hard. See the green light around the base.
Okay. Well, it's two things, and it's going to take, my name is Mr. Watson. I am the chaplain of the American Legion, okay? And there's two things. One thing I want to commend the mayor. Me and the mayor got together, and we decided to try to pull a lot of people together with what's going on in the community. Since nobody's stepping up to the plate, I decided with me and the mayor to step up to the plate and see what we can do. So basically what we're doing is we're gathering I'm going to talk to the Main Street pretty soon. I'm going to go talk to the Lions Club, and we're going to see if we can pull together something in the community so we can help these basically underprivileged kids, because they don't have a lot to do. And I think this would help out if we can pull it all together. So that we're working on it with the mayor. I've been talking to him for the past year and a half, and then I finally decided to put it into play. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we should have a wild space I'm on the board of the wild space public places, okay? And I haven't heard when the meeting is, but I imagine your proposal is going to be put through. So I don't know what's going on, but I have to talk to the lady because I think there's a meeting coming up in February. I'm not sure because of the way the COVID and stuff is going, but I'll keep y'all guys informed on when that's going on. Okay, so I want to be in the loop. And I just found out, I'm glad that I found this out because they'd have hit me and I wouldn't know what went on. Okay, so with that being said, I quit.
We appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we have any other live comment from the chamber? Dallas, do we have any virtual comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the dais. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published? I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Farnsworth, how do you vote?
Yay. Yay.
Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Martin, aye. Commissioner Clark, aye. Motion passes unanimously. That's going to take us to our first public hearing and ordinance. We're on item 4 of the agenda. This is a quasi-judicial. Once again, as we always state, for those of you who are just turning in, when the commission sits in quasi-judicial, they move from a legislative body to a judicial body. That brings with it a certain set of standards and rules that they must adhere to. We have 2 quasi-judicials tonight. I'm going to go through our quasi-judicial proceedings one time. As long as no one else enters the room, then we're just going to skip over the procedure and we're going to go right into the quasi-judicial. So as we said, once we're in quasi-judicial, we sit as a judicial body. The first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to ask the attorney in a moment to read the ordinance into the record for us. And then I'm going to explain the rules concerning testimony. And that is primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision. And it shall state the following, and I quote, all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. And I'm going to pause in the procedure right now to ask the commission if they have any ex parte. I'm going to do ex parte for each ordinance number. But I would ask that in a moment when I ask the clerk to swear us in, if you're here to speak to either of the quasi-judicials, please let us get you sworn in all at one time. So let me do ex parte. Commissioner Farnsworth, do you have anything you need to disclose?
I do not.
Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Okay, I have none as well. Again, I'm a non-voting mayor. Okay, Miss Judy, I'm going to ask you if you'll swear everybody in. It's always a little bit awkward on a hybrid meeting to swear everybody in. So if you are zooming in, please click the button that says raise your hand. And then Dallas will let us know if anyone's hand is raised. Since Miss Judy is also zooming in, we'll make sure she knows. She's going to say the oath once. We're going to use Miss Wendy for our model. Miss Wendy's going to say her name, and she's going to say that she does swear. And that's what and then we'll just move around with everyone with their hand raised. So if you are here to speak to ordinance 2021-04 or Ordinance 2021-05. Let's please swear you in now. So click your raise hand button, and we'll start with Miss Wendy. And Miss Judy, please administer the oath.
Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Wendy Kinzer Maxwell, I do.
You have been duly sworn.
We have no one else live. Oh, I'm sorry, we do. Come on down to the microphone so we can get your, hang on one second, Miss Judy.
Billy Belts, the applicant.
Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no one else live in the chamber. Dallas, do you have anyone with their hand raised? Okay, that's it. All right, and let me go ahead and ask Scott to read the ordinance 2021-04 into the record, and then we'll go through the presentation order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be ordinance number 2021-04, CPA 21-01. An ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan of 10 or less acres of land pursuant to an application by Billy Belts, agent for BMB Squared LLC, owner of said acreage, under the small scale development amendment procedures established in sections 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in land use classification from low density residential 1-4 dwelling units per acre to commercial on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida. Lot 4 of parcel number 02263-003-000, consisting of approximately 0.24 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Mr. Mayor, the appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass ordinance number 2021-04. Of course, our commission has the opportunity to deny the ordinance, or they can table it to a date certain in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we've taken care of some of the formalities. Let me go ahead and explain the presentation that we're going to follow tonight. We're going to begin with a staff overview. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with no time limit. And then staff will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with no time limit. I have not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. So that's going to move us to public comment. Anyone wishing to call in and speak to this item will have 3 minutes to do so. And then the applicant will be given an opportunity to cross-examine. Staff will be given an opportunity to cross-examine, and then we'll bring it to the members of the decision-making body, who through the chair may ask questions of the staff, applicant, or any of the participants. Then we'll hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff, and then the city attorney will advise the decision-making body as applicable law. Then we will deliberate, and after deliberations, a vote will be taken to approve. Approval conditions continue or deny. That's the order that we will follow for both quasi-judicials, and if no one new enters the room, we won't go through that process again. So with that, Miss Wendy, are you going to take the overview?
Yes, I am. This is an application that's presented to you. It's an app. If you go to the next slide, it's an application by Billy Belts, who's the agent for B&B Squared, and they are the owners of the property requesting a change in the future land use map of the comprehensive plan from low density residential to commercial. The parcel that they own has 3 lots originally platted that make up that particular piece of property. And this is the request that affects the westernmost lot, even though the other 2 lots are commercial, and you'll see that in the map. And it'll show you that in order to use the entire parcel for commercial development, that they need to rezone this extra little lot as a part of their parcel. The next slide shows you that this is a request for a small scale plan amendment. It's a change to your comprehensive plan future land use map, and because it's under 10 acres in size, it functions like a rezoning kind of a plan amendment, and doesn't have to go through the expedited review process through the state Department of Economic Opportunity. once you change your future land use, then you also change the rezoning, change the zoning on the property as well. And that goes through the same process of 2 public hearings before the city commission after having a recommendation from the planning and zoning board. And the next slide shows you the map of the property, and you can see where it's about 1/4 of an acre. You can see there's 3 lots, lots 2, 3, and 4, and it's that 4th most western lot with the square around it, or the rectangle. And the property all in the red shows the commercial intensive zoning that's already in existence. And the parcel that the part of the parcel that's squared off there is that's RSF2 in the zoning, but it's the land use is actually residential low density. And so this would be a change in the future land use to commercial. And the next slide gives you the recommendation of the planning and zoning board, excuse me, that they recommend to the city commission approval of the application. And if you have any questions, I can be happy to try to answer them for you. The recommendation is for approval. And this is on your first reading of this plan amendment.
Okay, so was that your whole presentation, Ms. Wendy? or
That was
just-
the whole presentation.
Good job. Way to fit it all in. Does that mean, Mr. Belch, you are waiving your presentation? There is a little bit, but I think it's because we're cross-zooming. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's going to take us to public comment. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are on item 4 of tonight's published agenda. We have heard the staff report and recommendation, which is for approval of this ordinance. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, now would be the appropriate time to do so. The phone number is on your screen. To get into the meeting, all you need to do is dial that phone number. We'll make sure you are admitted. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. So if you click that hand symbol, that'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. Again, we are on item 4, which is quasi-judicial hearing. It's the first reading on ordinance 2021-04. We don't have a motion on the floor right now. It's for public comment. So we're going to start with live audience members. Anyone live would like to make a comment? Seeing none. Dallas, we have anyone with their hand raised? We'll come back to the quasi-judicial. And that's going to take us, Mr. Belts, is there anything that you heard that you'd like to cross-examine? Okay. Ms. Wendy, would you like to cross-examine?
No, sir.
Okay. Dias, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant? Monty, I can't see your face. Are you shaking your head no?
No, I don't have no questions.
I'm going to take that as a no. Mr. Belts, do you feel the need to make a final argument? Ms. Wendy, would you like to make a final argument?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law?
It is substantial and competent evidence as enunciated by our land planner, Wendy Maxwell Kinzer.
Thank you, sir. All right. We've now entered into deliberations. If the board has no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve with conditions, continue or deny. I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Okay, seeing none. Dallas, have you got our phone number up? Johnny on the spot. Good job. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our first quasi-judicial. This is on ordinance 2021-04. I have a motion, probably second on the floor for approval. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on that motion, now's the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number that you see on your screen. That will get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. So we'll click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission, and we'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We'll start with live comment, and then we'll go to virtual comment. Anyone live in the chamber have any comments? Seeing none, do we have any virtual comments? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais. Commissioner Farnsworth, how do you vote?
Yay.
Commissioner Norfleet? Commissioner Martin? Aye. Commissioner Clark? Aye. Motion passed unanimously. That'll move us on to item 5, which is ordinance 2021-05. We're Dallas, so have anyone new entered the room? So we're all sworn in. Scott, would you go ahead and read the ordinance into the record, and then I'll ask for ex parte.
Yes, sir. Happy to do so, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2021-05, LDR 21-04. An ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida relating to the rezoning of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application by Billy Belts, agent for BMB Squared LLC, owner, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from RSF2 Residential Single Family Zoning District to CI Commercial Intensive Zoning District on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, Lot 4 of tax parcel number 02263-003-000, consisting of approximately 0.24 acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time, Mr. Mayor, will be to pass ordinance number 2021-05 as read by title only. And of course, the City Commission has the opportunity to deny the ordinance based upon substantial and competent evidence, or to table it to a date certain in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
do ex parte. Commissioner Farnsworth, do you have anything you need to report?
No, I do not.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark, thank you all. All right, we will go to the staff overview. Ms. Wendy, you handling this one as well?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This application is one for rezoning. If we could bring up the PowerPoint.
Give us 1 second, Wendy.
It is an application to go from the RSF2 to CI Commercial Intensive Zoning. It is the second part of the process after you change your future land use. And this rezoning, if approved, would be contingent upon the approval of the comprehensive plan amendment. If we could keep going through that slide, if you could show the text. The application itself is the rezoning application, and it is it does have a two public hearing process before the City Commission. The Planning and Zoning Board has heard the application and made a recommendation. The next slide shows you the map of the property, and this shows you the actual westernmost lot, which is still zoned RSF2. This was platted. You can see that all the lots in there, but the property itself has 3 lots and was platted originally back in the 1920s. And even though the eastern 2 parcels were zoned to commercial intensive many years ago, this last parcel has not been done yet. The application is to change that so that the parcel, the lots 2, 3, and 4 can all be developed together as one small commercial development. The next slide gives you the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, which was for approval, recommending to the City Commission that they approve the ordinance, approving the application LDR 2104. That concludes staff's report. If you have any questions.
Guys have, oh, no, I'm sorry. Okay, that's staff report and recommendation. The applicant is not going to make a presentation. Okay. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim third-party interview status. So that's going to move us to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to item 5 on tonight's published agenda and to public comment for ordinance 2021-05. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on this ordinance, all you need to do is accomplish that dial phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of the screen, you see a little hand symbol. So click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment from the chamber, and then we'll move to virtual comment. Does anyone live have anything they'd like to say about this ordinance? Seeing none. Doubts we have anyone with their hand raised virtually who'd like to make a comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll come back to the quasi-judicial. Would the applicant like to cross-examine anything they heard from staff? Ms. Wendy, would you like to cross-examine anything?
I would not. Thank you.
Members of the decision-making body, you have any questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. Ms. Phelps, would you like to make a final argument? Okay. Ms. Wendy, would you like to make a final argument?
No.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body?
This is substantial and competent evidence, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll enter into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve conditions, continue or deny. I have a motion from Commissioner Clark, a second from Commissioner Martin. Are there any questions or comments from the dais on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, put our phone number up. Dallas, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our second quasi-judicial. This is item number 5. I have a motion, probably second on the floor, to approve ordinance 2021-05 with no conditions. If you'd like to call in and make a comment to the commission on this agenda item, now would be the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. So click that hand symbol, let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with public comment from the chamber, then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anyone live who'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, do we have any virtual comments? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais for a vote. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
I saw him say aye.
Yes.
Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark, motion passes unanimously. Before we move on to item 6, I'd like to suggest perhaps because we only have one last remaining person in the audience who is on the agenda, but they're not on the agenda until item 10. Might we move the solid waste conversation to item 8 on the agenda? Should that be okay? Okay, we'll swap that around. Just try to, maybe someday you might get their favorite return somewhere. Yeah. Okay, item 6 is the tiny home ordinance. Brian, you're here live, right? Come on up to the.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, this is a draft of an ordinance that would allow for tiny home neighborhoods to be created in the city of Newberry. A basic definition of would derive of what a tiny home would be: single family residence, be on a permanent foundation of some sort, approximately 120 to 600 square feet. The approximately 120, the bottom end, comes from the language actually says that whatever the Florida Building Code will allow as the minimum size, legal size, is what would be allowed. Currently, that appears to be about 120 square feet on the small end. Then it has to, of course, meet the Florida Building Codes and must be either a site built or a modular built. It could be built in a factory and then shipped in. Likewise, if it's a manufactured tiny home, those actually are designed and inspected to different federal standards, but they'd be treated the same as a mobile home, or excuse me, a manufactured home, and would be allowed in areas that are zoned for mobile homes. Tiny home neighborhood, we've defined as basically on the small side, a minimum of 4 houses, the maximum of 12 houses per acre. Currently, and we'll discuss this again later, the draft ordinance does not have a maximum number of acres. And so where would they be allowed to be placed? Staff envisions this twofold. First, as potentially infill development to take some of those larger lots that are scattered around the downtown and the city core, make them a little bit more viable to develop because of the cost to bring infrastructure to them. This could help bridge that gap. And so in pretty much all of the residential categories, I won't read them all off here, but all of the residential categories that are already developed around them, and you're just looking at acre, 2, 3, 4 acre infill projects, this would be a way to make those happen. And the suggestion by staff is, in the ordinance, is to do by special exception only. It wouldn't be by right. You'd have to come before first the Planning and Zoning Board and then the Board of Adjustment, and it would have all of the same requirements that your normal quasi-judicial special exception application would have. And then the other opportunity would be if you have a larger development and they want to incorporate an element of tiny homes within that larger development, say a brand new from scratch subdivision in a residential category or in a mixed use or planned development. You do it by it being incorporated into the development order and limited to 30% of the total development. So it wouldn't be like a large mass tiny home neighborhood, but it would be a large subdivision that could have a component of tiny home neighborhood. At the Planning and Zoning Board, I want to point out, the Planning and Zoning Board, their recommendation was actually to require it to be approved by special exception throughout, regardless of situation, whether it's a brand new neighborhood being built as a component of that neighborhood or whether it's an infill project. We'll talk about that again a little bit later as well. And so general requirements, what we're talking about, like I said, would be minimum allowable by Florida Building Code up to 600 square feet. It could be in on a lot that's individually platted for small lots where you have each tiny home owner own the lot, or it could be on a unified single ownership parcel. Could be single or duplex design allowed. There's a little bit of flexibility there. Again, as I mentioned, have to be site built or modular construction unless it's zoned for manufactured housing, in which case it could be manufactured. Minimum of 1 acre lot, and again, a minimum of 4 houses to make a community, up to 12 per acre. And back to that, commission, as I mentioned, might want to, it was just between the Planning and Zoning Board review and tonight's meeting, realized we hadn't put in a limit on the square or the maximum acreage. And so the commission might want to consider putting in, say, for infill projects, you are limited to X number of acres. So that'd be something for consideration. And then in agricultural zoning districts, we're suggesting a maximum of 3 units per 5 acres. That way you don't have substantial septic loading combined, putting a lot of units in a small or in a agricultural areas where you don't have municipal water and wastewater. Then for continuing general requirements, just some examples, so that would be an example of a tiny home on a foundation. It's built just like any other home. It's just small. It's on a slab or a stem wall slab. Then you could have a manufactured tiny house that would come in on a trailer, just like on wheels, just like a regular manufactured house would. The wheels are removed, it's placed on pilings, and then it's anchored down permanently. And so there is a common area component required, minimum of 400 square feet for each unit, contributes to the common open area. You could have, it's not suggested in the ordinance as a requirement, but it would allow for a clubhouse or storage buildings and community buildings of some sort. A number of different uses could be applied there. The maintenance for all the common areas and facilities would need to be in a maintenance plan that's approved by the city, because you want to make sure that into the future that the neighborhood is maintained properly. Just like any larger neighborhood nowadays has an HOA, it'd be a similar type of concept. Minimum lot width of 20 feet and 50-foot depth. And again, it'd be surrounded by a lot of common area. Must have access to the public right-of-way with a maximum of 2 points of entry. And so this would not allow for an apron parking lot where people would be backing in and out of the parking lot onto the main end of the street that provides access. Have to have off-site parking, off-street parking rather, on the parcel, so that you only have either 1 point in, 1 point out, or you could have 1 point in and out. And all the buildings within the neighborhood would comply with the perimeter setbacks and have landscaping buffer requirements, and has to be served by potable water and wastewater, except of course in the ag districts. So again, just kind of an example of one of them that's out there that we found pictures of. There's the central common area. The units kind of surround that central common area. You've got some sidewalks like you would in a normal neighborhood, only in a compressed version. So, like I said, each neighborhood would have its own common central area. It could be used, it's for open public space, shared public space for the neighborhood. It could have community gardens, wide number of things. Like I said, a minimum of 400 square feet per unit would go towards that common open space requirement. Community buildings cannot count towards that requirement. And let's see, all the homes would be required to have a usable front porch. Again, during the Planning and Zoning Board considerations, the original draft had a specific dimensional requirement in it. I think it was 8 foot deep minimum, and whatever the width of the building is. And the Planning and Zoning Board recommended the change to say just a usable front porch. So it wouldn't be allowed to be just decorative. You'd have to have enough space, whatever that worked out to be, to have some small patio furniture or something on it. So it's actual usable space. Secondary entrances facing sidewalks and parking would have small porches for that as well. Again, some examples looking at neighborhood design. The one on the right, or excuse me, the left, you do have your off-street parking. Then you also have a loop around it where individual units have paved access, or you have the concept on the right where you have a off-street parking, but then you have pedestrian loop going around the common area, and the units all face inward to the common area without the paved loop for automobile access. So again, parking could be provided in a common lot or garage. And the recommendation is 1.5 spaces. Most of our neighborhoods require 2 spaces, at least 2 spaces per unit. This would, to reduce the automotive impact, would be 1.5 spaces. As we already talked about, common parking and drive aisles would be adjacent to neighborhood. Those that are adjacent to neighborhood residential parcels would be screened by further landscaping. Dedicated storage areas for boats and RVs would also have further screening so that they don't, so it wouldn't be seen directly by surrounding neighborhood areas. And then common parking areas not directly accessed, so there's no backing onto the main road. Pedestrian walkways provided to connect homes. This was a little bit, got a little bit off topic on the Planning and Zoning Board review, in that there was some confusion about what that meant. And really it's the same as we have in all of our neighborhoods. We have sidewalk requirements that go through the neighborhoods, a similar kind of thing, just on a tiny scale. In the neighborhood, the sidewalks would loop around the interior or loop around the neighborhood with a connection point to each of the houses. And then if you're going to do fencing, it's inside the neighborhood, not the perimeter, but on the inside, it'd be limited to like a little picket fence style. So some further examples, that's the kind of picket style fences in front. There's some variation in the pickets, but generally they're all about 4 feet tall or less, and they're not opaque. You can see through them. And then you've got the walkways that connect the neighborhood. And then again, looking down, you've got the off-street parking that has one point of ingress and egress, but no direct parking on or off the street. And so architectural design, the draft basically states that it would be in the Florida vernacular style, which is generally characterized as what you see in commercial development and residential development from the 1900s, maybe late 1800s to 1920s, that general era. Similar to our code for commercial development, which is also supposed to be have a Florida vernacular design to it as well. This goes into detail about what the Florida vernacular design standards are, but it's easier to go through and show you a couple of examples. But you're all, I'm sure, familiar with it. When you look downtown, you see some of the examples like this. So the one on the left, actually, to me, that's reminiscent of the Cade building. And then one on the right is a little bit newer design style, but it still has some of those features that Florida vernacular would entail. The reason for the design requirements, the architectural design requirements, would be, again, to maintain the aesthetics of the neighborhood so that it would fit nicely into existing developed areas. The neighbors wouldn't be upset that you're building a slum next door, that kind of thing. And there's a perception that could happen. This kind of requirement, we think, precludes that or avoids that concern. And so at the Planning and Zoning Board, they discussed one of the things, we talked about the Florida vernacular quite a bit, And we did have an example or two of some other developments out there that were not in the Florida vernacular, but actually were very attractive. And so there was a lot of discussion about loosening up that requirement, but it didn't actually make it into the motion for the recommendation for approval. And so that's could be a consideration of the commission as well, as to loosen up that requirement. Let's see. The overall discussion was in favor of that. It just didn't make it to the motion. And staff would certainly support that, as long as that at the time of application, there was some kind of a requirement for an overall design standard, architectural design standard. So you had a little bit of uniformity and you had a higher level product that came out at the other end. That's kind of an example of what we're talking about there. A much more contemporary design. You certainly wouldn't want to have that in your historic district, but at the same time, outside of the historic district, something like that, a much more contemporary design could be perfectly desirable and acceptable within an existing developed neighborhood area. And so on the 4th, the Planning and Zoning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the draft ordinance with the following changes. Require that all tiny home neighborhoods, including those being developed as part of a brand new larger scale subdivision, would be approved only by special exception. Change the front porch dimension, as I mentioned, to read only of a usual size. And then require the submittal of professional renderings for both the neighborhood design as well as each of the individual models that are going to be constructed within the neighborhood. So you'd have renderings of the actual frontages of the buildings, the elevations of the buildings, so you'd have an idea what you're going to see on the other end when you're approving. I will say that staff doesn't actually agree with the first recommendation. If you're developing a brand new neighborhood where you're going to have a new development order for that neighborhood and presumably developers agreement, you're going to already have substantial review by the first Planning and Zoning Board and then by the commission for that neighborhood. And so all of those considerations we think would be taken care of at that time. And staff would not recommend adding another layer of regulation or oversight to that through the special exception process, because all of those considerations are going to be at public hearings already anyway. So the public will have a chance for input for the new neighborhood. We think that certainly in the already developed areas where you're doing infill projects, special exceptions is absolutely warranted, but for brand new larger scale neighborhoods where this is only up to 30% component, all of those considerations are going to be brought out during the time of review by the Planning and Zoning Board and Commission.
Brian, can I ask you a question about that? Because it seems to me that what the P&Z was really looking for out of that special exception requirement was the third, and I've lost the
renderings.
The renderings. When we do a plan development, do we get actual renderings of what the homes will look? Because that seems to be the hold up here. I want to see what the home is going to look like. But I don't remember us getting actual professional renderings. I know we get, facades, we get measurements, we get those kind of things.
Mr. Mayor, you're right about that. You'll get a preliminary master plan. They'll show you the layout of the community, but typically you don't see any building elevations until much further down the line with the building permit process, which actually doesn't come before the commission. So that could be an element that could be incorporated at that stage as well without requiring a special exception. And so
you're saying we could just, if you come to us with a plan development that's going to include tiny homes, staff would say, hey, when it comes to that section of it, you have to have renderings.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that could be added.
And it would be added
to the ordinance.
Okay. All right. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Nope. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that's
okay. Well, before we go to questions, comments, I want to thank staff for all the work that you've done here. I want to thank the P&Z. This has become a much more interesting conversation. We've had people from all over the country have called us and to talk about this, talk about what we're doing here. So I do appreciate all the time that you put in it. Once again, Newberry is at the cutting edge. We're at the forefront of trying to do something. I've been trying to wrap my head around the special exception piece as well, because we don't do that with our other developments. You get things by right. Every time you add special exception, that means you can put a lot of money in, and then this body can say, no, we don't like that. I've been trying to equate it to a degree to our RV ordinance, which is an ordinance. It lays out all of these markers you have to hit, but then even though you've got to hook up to water and sewer, you got to do all these things, it still is a special exception. So I like staff's compromise there with that's going into anywhere that's already established a special exception. If it's going in a plan development, we add a clause that we need to see the renderings there. That seems to make some sense to me. Questions from the dais? Commissioner Clark, don't forget to turn your mic on.
This one here, when you're building these tiny home complexes, it says you have to have dedicated storage for boats and stuff like that. You talking about like in the parking lot or something?
No, Mr. Mayor, it says you may have dedicated storage, but if you do, then you have to provide visual screening of that. It's totally an option to the developer.
Because we got a boat storage facility they can go to. Okay,
On the tiny homes, what's the difference on if I wanted to build a tiny home on this lot now versus what you're talking about?
Mr. Mayor, if you own a lot in the city of Newberry and it's zoned for residential right now, if you build a tiny home that meets Florida Building Code, you can do that right now without the need for this ordinance. What this ordinance does is it allows us to increase densities on the infill lots, these little bit larger lots, acre, 2 acre, 3 acre lots that exist around downtown area that may be difficult to develop as a single residential unit or a couple of residential units because the cost to bring water and sewer infrastructure to them is so high. But if you increase the density on those infill lots with the tiny homes, then the cost to bring the water and sewer goes down because you're spreading it out over multiple units. But for a single unit, if you have a single lot, you already have the ability to build a tiny home. We don't have any code that would prevent you from doing that right now. It's just when you want to go to the larger little tiny home communities.
Commissioner Norfleet, you'll be next, Monty. I see you.
Some of the old flats for the city of Newberry, I don't know if they would, some of these smaller lot sizes that you're want to get to, but some of the existing city blocks when there was the old move trails pick up trash and stuff, would some of those lots qualify currently?
Mr. Mayor, I suppose potentially they could, but this would be more akin to a tiny home neighborhood. The concept, at least, was more akin to creating a small planned residential development or planned development, in that the lots, rather than being in a uniform linear type of layout like the current grid system, these you'd have, like some of the rendering showed, would be all contained on a single lot, or that lot would have individual parcel lots off of it. But again, those smaller lots, as it is right now, you could build tiny homes on them if that's what you chose to do.
And Paul, I'm getting some feedback from the folks watching at home. They can't hear you, so you might want to pull your microphone up next time. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The square footage of 600 feet, is that the footprint? Can they have a 2-story building and double that?
Mr. Mayor, as the ordinance is written right now, that would qualify as a small house. It wouldn't qualify as a tiny home, and so that wouldn't be part of tiny home neighborhood development. But some of the tiny homes that are 2 stories are only in the 600 square foot range. You got 300 or 400 downstairs and maybe 100 or 200 upstairs, and so in answer to the question, no, that wouldn't qualify as a tiny home. It would qualify as a small home and put it on a regular lot somewhere.
Okay. And the other thing, when I was looking at all those houses, none of them look like they're handicap accessible. Is that a requirement or not?
Just like Mr. Mayor, just like in a regular neighborhood, there are certain components of ADA compliance that are required and certain components that aren't. And so it would basically follow the ADA requirements would follow the same guidelines as you would in a regular neighborhood subdivision.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Clark.
Right, we had you mentioned earlier, do we have applicants already on the books waiting on this, or is this somebody already planning something coming in, or is this kind of a?
Mr. Mayor, one of the considerations we've looked at is could this be used for Veterans Village development? We do have a local businessman that's interested in doing tiny home neighborhoods. And then, as the mayor mentioned, we've gotten calls from 3 or 4 places around the country that just somehow heard about this ordinance being proposed. And we're excited, they are looking for places where they can develop tiny home neighborhoods. And we got a call from a modular construction company that does them in Orlando, Longwood, that is interested in it and could potentially be one of our first. And then I've already gotten calls actually on some specific parcels would these work. And so it's amazing how much interest this has actually generated without us actually being out there promoting it. Word's gotten around rapidly.
Once there's what's that TV station that has a whole show that's on tiny homes. Now, these are $1 million tiny homes, but they're impressive. Mr. Martin.
Just a couple of bullet points that I wrote down is I feel like the market demand for some of the items should prevail on things like maybe even porches or walkways. I feel like we're almost getting into the micromanaging a little bit on these. Commissioner Norfleet's comment was similar to something that I wrote, so maybe this is just a point of clarification, but a special exception for somebody who wanted to build one on their own lot would not apply, correct, if they're just building one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. If you own a lot and you want to build a single tiny home on it,
then there's no special
exception applying.
Okay. And as far as the architectural designs, that too, I kind of feel like we're trying to micromanage that down a little bit more than we really probably should. So I'm not so hung up on making sure that I have renderings and that sort of thing. Same thing, with single homes. I don't need renderings. I think the market really kind of determines some of those things. And I also wrote down that when it's part of a planned development, I'm not overly concerned with it either because, as you stated kind of in follow-up after I wrote this down, we're not asking for more than what we already have. It's already pretty much taken care of in the process. So that's all I had.
So I've got 3 bullet points that staff's looking for some feedback on. One was the special exception recommendation, which I've already heard from 2 or 3 of you, that if it's in a planned development, you don't feel there's need for that. So what about the caveat that do you want staff's compromise with the P&Z, that if it's in a planned development that we see renderings for the tiny home portions, are we willing to just work that out with each developer as we go, as we already normally do? Mr. Martin?
I do not need it as part of the planned development.
Do not? Okay. Commissioner Farnsworth? I've got 3 no's.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. One of the concerns I do have though is, are we going to open ourselves up to a possibility of becoming or starting a neighborhood for homeless people?
I don't think so. And one of the conversations that we had with the P and Z, and especially when it came to the design regulations, that is if you say that there are design regulations, whatever they are, you negate the I'm just going to go buy the shed and plop it down. So I agree that I don't want to get into the weeds. And this was my comment at the PNC. I'm glad you called it. It didn't make it into the motion. So I'm not interested in saying it has to be Florida vernacular. I want to find 6, broad terms and say it could be in any of these or something else that fits a standard. So, because I like the modern ones, I like they have to meet building code. It has to be attractive. So give us some options in there that let the market determine what they want to build, but prevents I'm just going to plop down a storage container and cut a hole in it, for a toilet. Does that answer your question, Commissioner? So part of the comments that we got from that, because some people were concerned that having any design standards in there pushes the price to where it's not as economic anymore. And I agree that having a design standard does mean that it's going to have to be more attractive. But in my mind, that prevents the slums. It prevents this from turning into, something that we don't want. We want to enable it, but we want it to be attractive. We want it to be an enhancement to the community. You have any follow-up, Commissioner Farnsworth?
I understand where you're coming from. I'm not so sure I feel 100% comfortable. They're becoming like a subsidized housing unit or something of that nature. If they're using it for that. So I don't know how something of that nature can be prevented or if it can be prevented from occurring.
Well, as long as this body doesn't fund subsidy, then we'll be subsidized because we would be the only ones that would subsidize it. So, I mean, if someone builds them to rent, it's a for-profit business. If someone builds them to sell, it's a for-profit business. They're going to want them to be attractive to attract, a consumer. I mean, I understand the concern, and that's why I think that's why Brian's talking about those design standards, having something in there that says it's got to be attractive. That it's still an affordable-ish option, but it's not not going to cure affordable housing overnight.
Yeah.
Commissioner Clark.
Brian, they know, what's kind of the cost of one of these to build, or even to put a modular on the ground? What's the minimum or maximum you've seen?
Mr. Mayor, there's a huge range, and that was one of the things that we talked about with the industry representative that contacted us at manufacturing down in Longwood. Those units that they sell, I think, are somewhere in the 20s to upper 40s. Because they're doing it in a manufacturing assembly line, they can keep their costs under control. But you see on the low end, it's probably $1 per square foot, a little bit more than your standard house would be, all the way up to we're hearing about $300 to $300 or more a square foot, depending on the amenities they build in. But that's like the mayor said, those are the ones you see on television where they've got the granite countertops and all the crazy amenities, and the neighborhood itself has got lots of amenities built in. The only thing that this would require is a common open area. There's no requirement that you put in clubhouse or pool or anything like that. Some of those they go pretty high, but I've seen as low as advertised as low as $10,000.
Okay, so we have consensus about the special exception. We have consensus about opening up the design regulations to include a broader variety, not trying to hold their feet down to one particular style, but have some standard in there that they have to adhere to. Just need a head nod. And the last bullet point I had was the acreage, putting the acreage in there. Can you explain to me what that means, Brian? So what you're saying is if there's somehow a half-acre lot between two existing houses, we need to designate whether or not that would be eligible here, or does it have to be an acre? Can't be less. What do you mean by that?
Mr. Mayor, the minimum acreage is 1 acre. We just didn't establish a maximum, and the thinking on that is, if you have an acre or two, or maybe three, even four, and you do the maximum 12 units per acre, overall, that's not going to necessarily, how do I put it, dominate the landscape or significantly alter the character of the area that it's being developed in. But if you have, you know, say you had a 10-acre parcel right in the middle of an area, you know, that could be a very substantial change in the character if you maxed out that development at 12 units per acre.
Okay.
So,
And seems to be one of those points that it's always good to remind ourselves that we could throw a number out right now, and if we don't like it, we can come back and just tweak that number. So we could say 3-acre maximum, a 5-acre maximum, and then if that becomes an issue later on down the road, I get what staff is saying. If I had 9 acres, that could, you know, be 90, 102 houses right in between.
Mr. Ray, you could use them for a tiny home, just one tiny home.
Just one tiny home, right?
Well, yes, the city manager put it out. We could have 2 because you could have the primary unit and then the accessory dwelling unit. So if you had a 600 square footer, you could put a 300 square footer with it.
Yeah. And all of those come back to you guys for special exception. If it's infill around town, you get to look at it, you get to see it, see if it works out. Commissioner Farnsworth, you're muted.
One other question. Is there any limit to how many people can actually live in a 600 square foot house?
Commissioner Clark says 25, so I think that's.
Well, that's on the Clark property.
This question came up at the PNC as well, and I think the issue here is once you own a house, it's difficult to regulate who lives in that house. So we have, you know, one of the fastest growing trends right now is 2 families purchasing one house. And I don't know how folks do that, but a lot of people are choosing to go in on a house together. That wouldn't work in my family. Commissioner Parker?
If operated by an HOA, I guess they could regulate that, or can they?
Yeah, and that was the P&Z answers to a lot of these questions as well. You make them establish an HOA, and then they maintain it. They take care of it. It's on them to decide how they want their neighborhood to operate.
Okay.
Did we decide on the acreage? You want to throw out 5 as a round number for now? Come back to it later. 3 acres minimum or maximum. I mean, to me, this is truly one of these things we could come back. We can just start something. He wants 4.3.
I think I would say at a minimum 5 acres, and in ag it might be 10 if you were going to do it, because in ag where there's no water and sewer, this ordinance limits 3 per 5 acres. So if you wanted to do something, say you had 10 acres agriculture, you wanted to set up a little Airbnb for people that want to hang out in Newberry for the weekend, maybe go visit the springs, 10-acre piece, you could put 6 of these units on there. So maybe in ag, I'd say a max of 10 acres, and non-ag, any other, a max of 5, I think, but it's the commission's decision.
I'm good with 10 and 5. That sounds. We'll always come back and amend it. That's a one stroke of the pen kind of a change. So I wouldn't spend too much time.
Mr. Mayor,
I'd also comment that it may be easier to go up than it is to go down. If you end up with somebody with some unforeseen.
That's true. How about, so, I mean, in ag, I agree with 10 because we've already said 5 acre lots. So why about 3 and 10 for ag? Commissioner Norfleet? All right, so we're good with the 3 and 10, Commissioner Farnsworth. He's good with 3 and 10 on the acreage. We're good with the design regulation to open those up, but have something. No special exception for PD. Another question, Commissioner Norfleet.
The setbacks on the dwellings, will they comply with fire code?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the buildings will still have to have a minimum separation of 10 feet. As anywhere, yeah, this would in no way amend or violate fire codes. So we still have to comply with all of the life safety requirements and Florida Building Code.
Okay. There's no other questions from the dais. One more, Commissioner Clark. Your microphone, Commissioner Clark.
We built these subdivisions that are already built, zero lot line, I call them. And they're sitting on literally nothing. And if you do have a half acre lot, and let's just go back to that. I know you said you could have one and one half the size, but could you have just two at 600 square feet? I mean, you got a half acre lot that's bigger than what you got houses on. It just don't.
Mr. Mayor,
It's your land usage too, though. You know what I mean?
The current accessory dwelling unit ordinance states that you can either do 1,000 square feet for the accessory dwelling unit, 1,000 square feet, or half the size of the primary residence, whichever is greater.
Either or.
Yeah.
So you could do 2 feet potentially would come.
No, the square though, because if it's on one that you're just building your own, it's a half acre, you get your one.
Yeah, but what if you want to build?
You couldn't build two now as a development. So if you wanted to build a second one, it would fall under the accessory dwelling. So that's like for your mother-in-law or something like that. So you get 1,000 foot or 50% of the main structure, but it's not or. Is it or is it and?
It's or.
Right.
So if you have a 3,000 square foot, you can do a 1,500 square foot accessory.
1,000 foot wouldn't be a tiny home anymore. 1,000 foot would be a small home.
We can do a 3,000.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that just because of the ordinance on the land?
Yes.
Okay. That's the ordinance on the accessory dwelling. So we might want to go back and change the accessory dwelling to have a clause for tiny homes. If you have a 600 foot square tiny home, your accessory dwelling could be an equivalent square footage size, because I'm still under, right. Right. Have mother-in-law and 600 foot outside. Before we open this up to the public, just so you know, going into World War II, the average family square footage home size for a family of 4 was 600 square feet. Since then, just have to throw a little history lesson there, you know. All right, if there's no more questions, comments from the dais? Public comment.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Joy Glanzer. Thank you. I'm so pleased that the city is considering moving towards having these tiny home neighborhoods. What a great alternative for affordable housing. To Commissioner Farnsworth's point, just because a home is smaller doesn't necessarily mean it would attract undesirables. Just like you said, in the old days, used to live in smaller homes. So I would think that wouldn't matter. The thing I worry about having a 10-acre minimum or even a 5-acre minimum is for maybe a veterans neighborhood, because they could have maybe 100 of these on 50 acres, which is needed. And I think you would find someone wanting to do that. So maybe consider that if you would. And the last thing is one question on the duplex. You said you could have you could make a duplex of these. Would that be 600 on each side or 600 total? So thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna take all the questions and then we'll direct, because I don't remember specifying a duplex. I'll have to ask Brian to help me on that one.
Just kind of a comment about becoming slummy. If you're building to Florida codes, I'm sorry, Peggy Loy, citizen. But if you're building to Florida codes, you're not going to be able to build anything too sleazy, because our codes are, they're expensive to build. So even small ones are not going to be too cheap.
I agree. Brian, can you help us on the question about the duplex?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the intent on that would be that if you're going to do a duplex, you could do up to 600 on each side.
Okay. All right. Dallas, will you put our telephone number up while we're considering if we have any other questions? ladies and gentlemen, we have seemingly are at least moving towards the end of a conversation on our first reading of ordinance 2021-01. That's item 6 on tonight's published agenda. If you'd like to call in, make a comment about tiny homes, you have a feeling, thought, suggestion, idea, all you need to do to comment us, dial the phone number on the screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. So we can click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment to the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We'll begin with live comments, and then we'll move to virtual comments. Do we have anyone left live that would like to comment on this conversation? Okay. And then I'd ask a commissioner to begin to organize a motion in your mind, how you want to phrase that, to exclude the special exception for PD, to get in the acreage comments and the design requirements. That's we have anyone on virtual with a hand raised? And we'll come back to the dais then. And at this point, we'll entertain a motion with conditions on ordinance 2021-01. Commissioner Martin.
I'd actually potentially like to table it to just make sure that we get it all brought back in one spot. We kind of talked about a lot, so
you want to see it written down?
I'd like to just come back in a bit more formal form.
We can certainly do that, or we can always. It has to be 2 readings, so we can vote to approve it now. See it written down when it comes back.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, this is Scott.
So we give them the suggestions with the motion. They write it up before it passes.
Let's review our changes.
Okay, I have the motion. The appropriate motion would be to approve ordinance 2021 with the following amendments. We reject the P&Z's. I'm sorry, hang on one second before I move forward. Scott is trying to get in here, and I did not see it. So
I'm not
Scott,
sure
go
that
ahead.
we can make substantive changes the second time around without going back to the first time around.
Scott, did you hear that concern?
I did not hear the concern, but I did hear the Commissioner Martin speaking to the issue of the changes to the ordinance, and I would support his point that he was making. These are substantive changes to the ordinance, particularly with respect to design change and that sort of thing. So I think in fairness, those do need to be written down, and those amendments need to be made so that you can know what specifically it is that you're voting on. I think you can direct the staff to bring back an ordinance that meets the requisites of what it is that you're talking about.
Okay, and that was going to be my question, because your presentation, Brian, it seemed like you were saying these were recommendations, but you didn't put them in the ordinance. Are they in the ordinance as you wrote it with the P&Z? Okay. Well, then does staff understand the conversation here and know the direction we want to take? Okay, so let's move to table it. Okay. Do I hear a second to table it? I don't think we need a second.
Second.
Did I hear a second? Okay, I have a motion to table from Commissioner Clark, second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any questions, comments from the dais on the motion to table? Seeing none. Public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion on the table, properly seconded, to table ordinance 2021-01 until staff has the opportunity to make those substantive changes and bring it back to us on first reading. If you'd like to call in and make a comment about that motion, now would be the perfect time to do so. And in a second, we'll get the telephone number on the screen. It's okay. And then you'll have the opportunity to do so. All you need to do is dial that number that's on your screen now. We'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, see a little hand symbol. So if we click that hand symbol, that'll let us know you'd like to address the dais on the motion to table this ordinance to a time certain. We'll start with live comment. Any public comment from the chamber on the motion on the floor? Any virtual comments? Anybody with their hand raised, Dallas? We gave him an extra few seconds since it took us a while to get there. Mr. New, do you have any comment before we?
Well, I was following up on the time certain element of that. Did the motion include February 8th, which would be our next city commission meeting?
Is that the intention of the maker of the motion? Is that the intention of the seconder of the
I thought
motion?
about that after I said it, but that would be fine as long as the seconder would agree.
So the time certain is February 8th would be the next meeting.
Right. And just for the board's edification, the second meeting in February is not going to be a regular meeting, and it's a joint meeting. So if it's approved at the first reading on February the 8th, the earliest the commission would see it back is the first meeting in March, which from staff's perspective is there's no emergency here. Just wanted y'all to be aware that that's when it would be considered for second reading.
Okay. Okay, any other comment? Hearing none, we'll begin with roll call vote. Commissioner Farnsworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. That will move us to our first agenda item, which is item 7, strategic planning, community vision process. We're doing with 8. So we have 7, then we'll flip to 8. Mike, you may have us do that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, we have on the Zoom call with us tonight, Mariah Raines. She's with the University of Central Florida, the Florida Institute of Government. So she's available to discuss particulars about the proposal that they have provided for us to perform a strategic planning process for the city, and where we'll end up with a final report that kind of given us direction. They submitted a proposal. We discussed it at our last meeting. The commission asked us to go back with just a few questions of Mariah and her team. We did. One of those questions was on the community forums. The commission felt like it was best that we conduct 2, maybe 1 in person, live, and then one virtual. And most of the meetings in the proposal were proposed to be virtual. So we discussed that with Mariah and her team. They revised their proposal to include a live a second live in-person community forum to solicit feedback from the community prior to a commission workshop. Generally, the way that this will roll out is the process will start with interviewing stakeholders, city commission and the city manager, but any stakeholders as to get their thoughts on where this process may go. Then there would be 2 community visioning forums conducted, probably one on a weekend, on a Saturday morning sometime, another on an evening. One of those would be in person. The next step would be a commission workshop, a virtual meeting or hybrid meeting like we're used to doing, where the Florida Institute of Government, Mariah and her team would participate virtually. And she assures us that during the 2020 year, they've done several of these types of processes. She feels like they're very confident that they can facilitate this process virtually pretty well for us. And then finally, there's some staff time, a workshop with senior staff, get their feedback. It all gets boiled down into a final presentation to the City Commission. So the Florida Institute of Government proposes a 4-month time frame to complete this. We're trying to get it completed early enough in the summer so that anything that comes out of it that the commission would like to see funded in next year's budget can get into that conversation early. I believe we'll probably get started maybe in late February or March with some of the very first things that are going on, maybe the community forums. And the proposed fee is $11,300. I'd mentioned to the commission, we didn't program this into the 2021 budget that we're currently in, but we've had enough things that aren't going exactly like we anticipated that we feel like there's sufficient revenues in this year's budget to cover this process for the commission. Mariah is online. She is an expert in doing these. We've interviewed her pretty thoroughly, and we are supremely confident that she knows way more about what we're about to undertake than we do. And she's available for your questions if you have any.
Well, that's exactly why we wanted to reach out to you there, Ms. Raines. Can you tell us a little bit about what this will look like virtually? What do you do? Well, it's always difficult in the community to all the time orchestrate some of these community conversations. What have you found that's been successful in a virtual world?
So typically with, prior to COVID, it was all very interactive workshop formats, small groups at tables, brainstorming, flip charting, reporting back. And what we've had to adopt is a process where we're using tools like Zoom is one that we use, but we have others where we create virtual engagement. So Zoom has the capability in a workshop setting. So this would be run as a workshop rather than a commission meeting. And in a workshop setting, we have the ability then to create breakout rooms within the group. So we can still do small group discussion, and we would have specific tasks for those small groups, and they come right back to the same Zoom meeting, and then we do report backs. We also have the ability to use polling software, so we can poll whether we're talking about citizens, or we can also poll the commissioners as we're looking at ranking priorities and ranking goals. We've got chat functions and chat features that we can use as additional tools to engage. So we've been very successful. In my bio, one of the things that I mentioned, I lead the Volusia League of Cities. I serve as their executive director, and also the Tri-County League of Cities. And so through that, we've worked with a lot of our cities here in the Central Florida area to do programs like this and to keep it engaging, keep it interactive, and make sure that we're getting the necessary input that you need to make decisions as you look out over this 5-year plan.
I would imagine that some aspects of a virtual workshop for visioning are actually better than live. You can share the screen, you can focus in on maps, you can kind of make sure everybody's following along, those kinds of things. Go ahead.
I was just going to add, we've also found that engagement has actually increased with having a virtual option, because people don't have to commute to a meeting and their schedules are a little bit more flexible when all they have to do is log in. So I think you might actually have more citizen participation on the virtual option than in the in-person option, which is certainly great.
Okay, let me see if they have any questions from the diet. Mr. Martin.
Ms. Raines, how has your capture rate been with the elderly community who are not as necessarily computer savvy, so to speak?
So that's a great question. One of the topics that we included in the plan is a communication plan. And so I would work with your staff up front to decide what the best method is to communicate and really try to create additional engagement. We discussed, utility billing notification and certainly social media, but we talked about the fact that many seniors are not on social media. So we could customize that. If you felt that your seniors were needing additional exposure, I've worked with some agencies and they've actually done some hand-delivered flyers to certain areas or to certain groups that they know may be more senior citizens and may not have access to technology. Sometimes we've had some agencies that, they want the engagement and they're actually dividing up some of the lists among their staff or among their commission and calling residents and personally inviting them to attend the sessions. So there are a number of, we've done personal invitations, obviously through mail. So there are a number of options that range in cost and in time that we can certainly help you explore for your population. What we have found is that our seniors are usually very engaged, and we want to continue that. And so that's where offering both a hybrid and in-person will hopefully meet that need, whatever their comfort level is.
Have any other questions? Mr. Martin?
I guess by way of follow-up, Ms. Raines, are you seeing maybe as time goes along that some of the seniors are getting more adept at using Zoom, or does that seem to still be a little bit of a struggle for them, whereby we just need to weight an in-person option a little bit heavier?
So I am seeing our seniors are getting more and more familiar, and I smile because this includes a lot of the elected that I work with, many of which are retired, and they're using their retirement time to dedicate to their cities. So I'm seeing it with my elected as well, my boards, that, at first they were hesitant with Zoom and now they're pros. So I don't know that the same is true of your citizens, that they're pros, but I think many of them have had to adapt in order to communicate with their families. And so I think many of them are more familiar with the technology and a little more comfortable than they were a year ago. I also would add, as you know, the priority with vaccinations is with our senior population. So as we start to look into February and or March, we'll have more of that population that will hopefully be double vaccinated at that time and be more willing to engage live.
Thank you. I would tend to agree, and I'd actually be interested to see about the turnout, because one of the thoughts that's in the back of my mind every time we try to do something of this is that people just aren't necessarily willing to leave the house.
Right.
So if they have the option to Zoom in, and I'm not sure if maybe there's an option where we could have a TV at our municipal building where folks could come and watch, and we have one microphone set up where they could still ask questions. If they don't want to actually work the technology, I don't know, we can kind of think about, a hybrid approach, that way you still have some options there available to you. So if there are no more questions for Ms. Raines, Mike, we've been able to take some of our other professional development funds, move into this. We've got some other uncompleted projects. We think we can handle this out of budget inclusion and have this done in time for any considerations that would require budgetary thoughts. That's our goal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And with the thought of, should we postpone this to post-COVID, the thought is that at minimum, you'd want to do this every 5 years. But if it's something that a year from now or 2 years from now, we wanted to reconvene, break this out and see how we were doing, or if we needed to supplement it, that we'd certainly be in a position to do that as well.
Okay, I saw Ms. Raines had a hand up. Go ahead first, and then we'll go to
Yes, I also just wanted to emphasize a requirement that came through from the UCF General Counsel team, just to ensure that your commission is making an informed decision. So we added that language to to page 8 of that proposal. But because of COVID-19, UCF Legal has taken a very cautious approach to in-person meetings, whether it be with our students on campus or whether it be with those of us that are providing services off campus. And so they have some very specific requirements that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. The first is that if you were going to hire us, we as a university will require that everyone in attendance has to wear a face mask. They also, in addition to that, we would social distance them 6 feet apart. And so I would work with your team to develop a floor plan that met that need. And then we also would require that they sign a waiver, it also indicating that, within the last 72 hours, they haven't been symptomatic, and we would specify what those symptoms are. So UCF General Counsel has been very specific about this requirement. And again, I just wanted to ensure that your commission was aware and agreement before you made that decision to continue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Other thoughts, concerns? Mike, we're looking for a motion here tonight to move forward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, staff prefers a motion to proceed with the proposal submitted by the Florida Institute of Government or not.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Norfleet. Do I hear a second? I have a second from Commissioner Clark. Thoughts, questions from the dais? Commissioner Farnsworth, is that? I can only see your forehead, so I'm not sure if you're, no? All right. If there's no more questions from the dais, I have a motion, probably second. Let's go to public comment. Now, if you'll put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on item 7 tonight, which is a conversation about strategic planning and our community visioning process. If you remember the recent election, there was a ballot language for something called the Growth Management Amendments. And that conversation really sparked a lot of dialogue about communities having strategies, communities having their own vision, and having the autonomy to fulfill their own vision as they see fit. This topic is part and parcel of that larger topic. And so I commend staff for making sure that we do this on a regular basis, because as we've recently discovered in our conversations with some county commissioners, that they were unaware that the city of Newberry has their own visioning process. They were unaware that the city of Newberry has our own comp plan. those kinds of things, our own urban services section. So, these kinds of activities, I think are important. They're important for us. They're important for our engagement with the community. And so I commend the efforts to get to where we're at right now. So if you're out or trying to call in, hopefully you've dialed the number at the bottom of your screen. See little hand symbols. And if we click that, let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to start with live comment. Do we have anyone in the chamber? No. And we have no one live. So we'll come back. Anybody have any last questions before we have a roll call vote? Seeing none. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yay.
Commissioner Norfleet? Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Clark? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Raines, for sticking with us till the end. We appreciate it. We look forward to working with you, and we're excited about the process. So
thank you. I look forward to it as well. Yes, we will. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, and we have altered our agenda now. We've moved item 10 to new item 8, and everything else has gone down 1. So, Mike, you're going to take us through a solid waste rate conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're gonna talk garbage for a few minutes. As the City Commission knows, our solid waste contractor is Waste Pro USA. They won a bid some 2 or 3 years ago, and so we have a partnership with them to provide solid waste services in Newberry. A portion of the fee that they charge us and that we charge our customers is a pass-through fee that has to do with a tipping fee. When Waste Pro picks up the garbage from our residents, they take it over to the Alachua County transfer station, and they pay Alachua County by the ton for solid waste disposed there. So when we solicited bids from Waste Pro, they were paying a tipping fee of $48.08 per ton. That was embedded in the cost and the rates that they proposed to the city. In October, in somewhere in the latter half of October, Alachua County transmitted a letter to Waste Pro that said, hey, just FYI, by the way, we raised your rates, your tipping fee from $48.08 to $52 a ton, and it's effective 13 days ago. So with that abundance of notice, Waste Pro was not able to let us know that this was coming down the pipe. So they advised us immediately upon receipt of the letter. We asked them what the rate impact would be to our customers. And in late December, we got a letter from Waste Pro. Here's the proposed impact to your customers. This is how we translate the change of $3.92 per ton in terms of your rate, which is a monthly fee. And the average, the impact to the residential customer is 40 cents per month. So the rates will be going from, let me pull the proposed resolution. What we charge our customers, it's going up 40 cents. So yeah, I don't even have the old, it's $15.75 or 15, we're going up to $16.20. So it's a 40% rate increase for residential accounts. It's a proportional rate increase for our commercial accounts. The commercial accounts, it's a 4% increase. Apparently, the commercial waste fees have more tipping fee embedded in them. For the 4% increase, the residential increases calculate out to be a 2.5% increase. So staff proposes that the commission, it's a two-step recommendation. First is that we have a second amendment to the agreement for solid waste services. It's attached that changes the fees that Waste Pro charges us for collecting waste from us, and then amends it to incorporate the new rates. The next part would be then we need to adopt a resolution that outlines what we charge our customers. And in addition to what Waste Pro charges us, there's a franchise fee and an administrative fee that gets tacked on. So we make about $1 a month a customer, something along those lines. So two different things to approve by this commission. They're both embedded, they're both enclosed. The first being the second amendment to the agreement for solid waste services as the first motion. The second motion would be to approve Resolution 2101 with the new rate schedule behind it. If the commission makes that motion, then staff recommends that the city attorney read the resolution by title only prior to us proceeding with that vote. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I have two sort of thoughts to this. You know, I know that from some people's perspective, we spend a lot of time beating up on the BOCC and not having a lot of nice things to say. In this instance, I think that there is a valid criticism here when it comes to lack of communication. And this is, from my perspective, often what begins these conversations. So in October, they made a decision. They failed to communicate that decision. And here we find ourselves 3 months later, 4 months later, before we can really rectify the situation. So I know that the BOCC watches this, and without being bombastic, I would simply like to say this is an example of what causes some of the tension between the 9 cities and the BOCC when it comes to failure to communicate. My other thought is that Waste Pro is not just one of our vendors. Waste Pro is a community partner. They have been very gracious and generous when it comes to West Fest and lots of community activities that go on. And it recalls to my mind when we were having some issues rebuilding our fire departments, our fire station. And the vendor that we hired there was not being a good vendor to all of our local folks doing the job. It wasn't paying them. And this board took the extraordinary measure of saying, we're going to make sure that our guys, our local contractors get paid, even though we've already dealt with the overall contractor. So I'm not sure what the numbers are, but I know that Waste Pro has been absorbing this loss for 3 months. It'll be 4 by the time that we get there. So I would just put it out there that this board may want to consider asking staff to look at what the rate would be if we want to make them whole, because this is a pass-through charge. They've been providing the service. No one's seen a disruption in their service because of this. It's just a thought. I don't know what those numbers would be, could be. We could try to make them whole on the whole. We could try to share in the cost with them. Is there any appetite to? Do we know what the numbers are? I think I'm not a mathematician. That's the one subject I don't teach. You want to say it's Mike? I'm not even going to say. You give me your best guess.
Mr. Mayor, I think that if we charged 25 cents, somewhere in the 20 to 30 cent per residential customer per month for the rest of this fiscal year, I think we would raise enough revenues to make them whole. It wouldn't be drastic like $1. It would be something south of 50 cents a month for the rest of the fiscal year, would allow us to collect enough revenues to make them whole. If the commission gives us that direction, we'll figure out what that rate is. We'll bring it back on February the 8th. And with the intent of going back to these rates beginning in October of 2021, so that now we're back to where we need to be.
And that would be, so 40 cents is making them whole moving forward. Perhaps somewhere in the range of 65-cent increase a month would, in the time period, so that at the beginning of the fiscal year, that quarter goes away. Correct. Thoughts? Okay, I have a head nod, a head nod, a head nod, 4 head nods, 4 unanimous head nods. What does that do to our motion tonight? Do we need to hone those numbers down and bring that back?
Mr. Mayor, we could do it 2 ways. We could move with item 1, which is authorize the execution of contract with Waste Pro, and direct staff to bring back resolution 2021-01, or we could just table the whole thing till February the 8th. I think they both have the same effects, so staff's pretty neutral on that.
Thoughts? Move forward with one, knock one out, bring the other one back, or just bring them all back on the first meeting in February and do it at one time? 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. Bring it all back and do it in February. That's going to be fine with the vendor.
Yeah, I think I was going to ask the vendor if they'd like to, since they have city commission meetings on the same nights that we do, that's why we scheduled them at the end so they could finish their meeting and rush over here. Maybe if she'd like to say what she, give her feedback now, maybe it'll save her a trip next Monday or in 2 weeks from now on a Monday.
Come on down. It's nice of you to visit. You don't do that anymore, you know, you're kind of busy on these nights. Yes.
I should know that by heart. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Dana Miller from Wasteboro. Definitely want to express my gratitude to staff and to y'all, Commission, for accommodating the agenda item on the placement of your agenda tonight to help me out. I appreciate that very much. City manager did a great job explaining it, cut and dry. Yes, county on, I think it was October 13th or 16th, did send a letter kind of saying, oh, by the way, we raised your rates. So unfortunately, I have to be before you today to ask for this increase. It's not really something that we were thinking of having to do. So, but it is a complete pass through, as the city manager said. Yes, we can, I'd be happy, it'd be fine to wait till February 8th meeting to just knock both out at the same time. And I appreciate very much the consideration of, as you put it, Mayor, making us whole, taking us back to October 1st to make up for the 4 months of lost revenue there that we have been paying for. So if I'm open for questions, but I think it's pretty cut and dry agenda item.
Commissioner Martin.
I'd be willing to waive her appearance at the next meeting.
I don't have to come next time?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Farnsworth, is that you trying to get my? No, okay.
No.
I think Commissioner Norfolk.
Is there any alternatives to the Alachua County Levita Brown Center?
The simple answer is yes, there's always alternatives. The question is are we allowed to take it anywhere else is really probably what you're asking me. However, in this area, for example, Levy County Transfer Station is $61 a ton. So it's much more expensive to take it there. The next closest location, New River landfill up in Rayford, but that the distance wouldn't fiscally be responsible to take up there. So yes, there's alternatives, but not always either fiscally or distance responsible for that.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I think you see the sentiment and direction of this board. So if you've got another conflict, I wouldn't worry about coming back on February. We won't take it personally as an insult.
Please don't take it personally. I do also, just in case, I want to just make mention, our division manager, Nate Frischkorn, is on Zoom right now listening in, just in case y'all had any questions. And I can always make sure that he's on Zoom on the next, or here in person at the next meeting, just in case there's any questions. So, and Mayor, I think you missed your calling, by the way, I have to tell you. When you were rattling off the rules of a quasi-judicial hearing, I felt like I was in an auction. It was very auctioneer-like. So
we've been doing a lot of them here.
Yes.
Lately, so yeah, we're getting them almost memorized.
And
yes.
but that makes the city attorney shudder when you say that.
Oh,
So-
okay. I'm sorry. City attorney, I'm terribly sorry. You didn't hear me say anything. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am. And thank you for all that Wasteboro does for the city of Newberry. We really appreciate what we see your signs out for all of our different groups and organizations, all the things that you support. So thank you for just being a community partner with us.
We take that role very seriously, as you've seen over the many years we've serviced Newberry. And I will, that reminds me, I will throw out there, I know we will be doing a cleanup, helping a cleanup for a private entity coming up soon in February. However, if you remember last spring, the cleanups in the spring under the umbrella of Keep Alachua County Beautiful were canceled due to COVID. So now is the time for y'all to consider, not tonight, obviously, but for y'all to start considering, is that something you're going to do? Keep Alachua County Beautiful is open and running and available if you wanted to do their cleanup this year. I only bring it up because if I start getting multiple cities, I just want to make sure I don't double book a Saturday for the cleanup.
We're going to keep the city of Newberry beautiful.
You always do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, that's going to move us to new item 9, Champions Park operator request for relief of payment obligation. And that, I see Mr. Blakelock and his partner have zoomed in, but we'll begin with Travis. Travis, you want to introduce this topic?
Good evening again. Yes, I will introduce it. We are bringing before you the Champions Park end of year payment, the operator seeking relief. Fast forward here. The recommended action is to authorize the city manager to provide relief from end of year payment obligation requirements in the Champions Park Operations and Management Agreement. Some background. In 2018, the city of Newberry entered into an agreement with Rad Sports to operate Champions Park. The operator is required to compensate the city for use of the park. This is done through a minimum annual payment of $25,000. That $25,000 comes from two things. 5% of the gross revenues from the operations at a tournament facility, basically meaning things such as rentals for use of the facility from event hosts, and then 20% from non-gross or from non-tournament, which would be things like a group travel ball group coming in and renting the park. Review. In 2020, Rad Sports completed 17 tournaments. They also had 17 tournaments canceled due to coronavirus and during the shutdown, basically starting in March. They actually were one of the first facilities to get back up and running whenever Corona happened. And that kind of helped them maybe open up some opportunities for 2021, some event, that they wouldn't have before. They moved it to Champions Park. They got to see the facility. Might have opened some doors for 2021. Back to 2020 though. Rad Sports to date has paid 18 grand towards the minimum annual payment of $25,000. Due to coronavirus and the cancellations, they report lost revenue in the range of $150,000, which equates to a loss that they would have paid to the city in the 5%/20% of around $7,500. Their outstanding balance right now is $6,700. And back to the relief. They just something else. Rad Sports, they forwarded a letter to us requesting this relief.
Is that it, Travis? That's it. All right. I'm actually pretty surprised that in COVID world, they were able to pull off as much as they did. I know Richard is on the line. Richard, do you have anything you want to add to Travis's comments? I know you're not feeling well tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Your partner, we understand that as well.
Yeah,
So,
Anthony's on.
Anthony.
Yeah, my arthritis has crept up on me. Travis hit pretty much the numbers. Obviously, in March, April, and May, we lost all of our events. But with the city support behind us and being able to open the park back up, we were able to pull in some national events that really helped us, get back on track. And by doing that, we have Backwards K, PGF. Actually, PGF has 150 teams scheduled to come in February. And so we've picked up some showcases that normally we wouldn't pick up. And right now we've got 34 events on the books for 2021. And I think it's virtually by being able to bring these out-of-state teams in when we were the largest park open after the May reopening of the park. So we're super excited on that. We're very appreciative of the support that the commission and mayor has given us to be able to open the park up, to be able to run it. So, we're in a situation just like everybody else where, we hit that window of time when everything was shut down and put us behind. We really thought we were going to be behind and in trouble. But again, by being able to open the park back up and steal some events out of Atlanta and out of Jacksonville and some other areas and bring them into the park, we were able to put some numbers back together, as well as sign extended contracts with the same organizations coming back because they've never been to the park. So in one way, you know, the virus really crippled us in the beginning, but I think it's paid off for us for next year by exposing the park to a lot of new event owners to be able to come in next year.
Okay, thank you, sir. And just for folks watching at home, so that it's clear that the operator of Champions Park pays $25,000 into a depreciation account to the city. The city turns around and puts that money right back into the park maintenance, things that would go towards things that make sure the park looks like a source of pride for the community. So what the operator is asking isn't for the city to lose $6,000. It's for that depreciation account to not grow by that $6,000. That depreciation account would be short this year. So just so we're clear, that's exactly where that money goes. It goes right back into the park. So the park would get the $19,000 this year to go in the depreciation account. It just wouldn't get the $25,000 to go in the depreciation account. Just so we're all on the same page there. So the Mike,
Is that minimum that we're getting out of this being New Year's, or so what do we usually get in the terms of money on an annual basis?
we don't profit off of
You don't
Champions
profit,
Park.
but it's 25 max.
It's the minimum.
It's
25 is
minimum.
the
Mr.
minimum.
Mayor, it's the minimum. However, I mean, I
As
believe
it, as
that's
it
what,
grows, you get more and more.
It's 20, and what's the percentage? It's 25 or percentage, whichever one is greater.
correct. I think it's 250 is I think the max is 250.
Okay. So the better they do, the more we'll be able to put back into the park.
5 and 20 and max.
Okay. Commissioner Martin.
Travis, is this having any impact on money that we have already spent that we're no longer able to recoup at this point?
It is not, no, sir.
Commissioner Norfleet.
I think that maybe on this, could they just defer that money till the end of next year if they're going to have an excellent year next year that they're saying?
So in case you had a hard time hearing Commissioner Norfleet, he asked, what about just deferring it to next year? We'll see how we do next year. So next year we pay it then. Commissioner Farnsworth, are you reaching for a mic? I can never tell if there's light going on in your room. So, all right. Other thoughts? We need to move towards a motion here, whether we just want to chalk it up to COVID and say 19,000 is good for this year, or we could defer it till next year and see how next year's going. Sensibly, that would put a $31,000 payment into the depreciation account to make up for it. Then, how's the commission feel? Commissioner Martin?
I don't have too much heartache trying to do that, but only so much as it has any real impact on what projects needing to be accelerated or something like that. I think, you know, to Commissioner Norfleet's point, if we can kind of all share in the burden of what's come before us, likewise also share in the benefit of getting these other teams as well, I think that would make a little bit more sense, and maybe you guys can have a follow-up conversation with the operator before we make the call on that.
Mr. New?
I have a kind of a follow-up on that. If because 25 is the minimum. What the formula says is we get 5% of tournament revenues plus 20% of non-tournament revenues, a minimum of 20,000, 25,000, a maximum of 250,000. If what that direction would be saying is that it is those percentages plus last year's balance or a minimum of 31,000. Because, you know, next year, if they have a banner year, we could make more than 25,000, but that wouldn't include last year's balance. Well, that's what I'm
But
asking.
that's what he's asking.
Are
Do
we just gonna
want-
move the minimum to 31,000? Or are we gonna say the formula stays in place, you guys kill it, and we end up getting 40,000 based on percentages, and then we're still gonna add 6,000 on top at the end of the year to make up for last year? Okay.
I mean, I think at this point, it may be best to just say, let's wait and see what happens next year, because, you know, if the money's going into an account to be spent back in the park, they want to put money in that account to make the nicest park that they want. I think trying to defer it gets us into this kind of gray area of, well, what does that mean? Are we going to do percentages? And then whatever they are, plus 6K, you know, let's just hope that they have a banner year and start putting more money into the account. Like I said at the beginning, I'm pretty surprised that they're able to get to 19 in the year that we've been having with all these things. So to say they've only going to put $19,000 away to put back into the park, I would, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's a pretty good deal to get out of 2020, and let's get into the next year and just see what happens next year. Head nods. We need a motion here to authorize.
Mr. Mayor, if the commission is not prepared to authorize a waiver today, if they want to wait and see, then I'd ask the commission to authorize me not to enforce that portion of the contract for a period of a year, and we can come back and see next year. Otherwise, I'm going to get forced into either I'm not enforcing a contract that I'm required to, or I'm compelling them to pay.
Remind me to stipulate, because I think what the manager is saying, especially for our new commissioners, our contract, they can be out of compliance 1 year. So we could just say, we're not going to defer the money, but you're just going to be out of compliance for this year. And that would give them 1 year to rectify it. Is that the terms of the contract?
Not exactly. They're required to cure. And on this issue, they're required to cure, I think, in 15 days. Most things in the contract, they're required to cure in 30 days. There's one item in the contract that can't be cured in 30 days because it's an annual requirement. So their annual requirement says they'll have a minimum of 12 multi-day events. If they don't make that, there's no way for them to cure in 30 days because it's an annual requirement. So we give them an additional year to cure that one requirement. But this particular requirement is supposed to be cured within 15 days notice by the city manager. But if the commission says, no, you can continue to toll it. I received a letter from them and I told that requirement pending this determination. If the commission says, hey, let's go ahead and see what happens at the end of next year, we'll keep it on the books and it'll come back to you in early 2022.
I'm not 100% clear with what we said we're good for. So that means that we're not deferring the money, but you're not sending the letter, and you're just going to come back next year and say, what's going on?
Mr. Mayor, the recommended motion would be to defer a decision on this item until January of 2022 and authorize the manager to not enforce this portion of the contract until it comes back to the commission for consideration.
Richard, you got any thoughts on that?
This
You're
is
off the hook
Anthony.
immediately,
I
potentially on the hook a year from now.
Yeah,
I'll let Anthony go. He handles our contracts.
yeah. Well, and I think more than anything on the back end, I think we're not looking to get so much, we're not looking for anything beyond the events that we had already booked that canceled simply due to COVID. And again, like Richard said, with the county reopening and with us, the city and the mayor and everybody working with us to be able to get business rolling back in. Just anecdotally, Coke, Florida had to do a little bit of digging because they couldn't figure out where this Newberry was and why it was such a bright spot on their state numbers for their beverage sales. So I think the impact that we had for the city and especially the locals there far outweighs any of the forgiveness that we're asking for. And while we lost that income, we kept all of our staff employed. Everybody kept working. We didn't let anybody go. And so I think what we're asking for is a clean slate for 2021. We would like to, again, we're not asking for any forgiveness, say, of a dropped ball or any missed performance on our part, but simply due to this COVID, we're saying, hey, 2021, we're hoping is a banner year, that we're going to fill hotels, restaurants are going to get sold out again, gas stations are going to sell more beer than they ever thought they would. And we'd all like to just kind of write 2020 off and move on. I hear the point about deferring that and hoping that we have it. And I really hope that we do too. But just as a reminder, year one, we happily paid the shortcoming out of our own pockets. So we literally paid you guys to manage the park year one, knowing that we felt pretty confident about our abilities to book in year two. And we're looking forward to year three here being even more successful than 2020. And from a financial standpoint, we'd like to finally get paid for the work that we put into that Champions ballpark, and hope that you guys would see it that way too.
Okay. So we have a request to leave 2020 behind us and start a new slate in 21. We have a suggestion of deferring it and coming back to it in 21. Any further? Commissioner Farnsworth, you've been kind of quiet on this conversation. You want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I think we should just go ahead and start a new slate in 2021 and go from there.
Okay. Any thought? Again, I mean, my only thought here is, we're not writing anybody a check. No money is really changing hands here. We're just not putting $6,000 in a depreciation account. So there's no sunk cost. It's just they'll not have $6,000 to fix a roof. They'll have $19,000 to fix the roof. They won't have 25. So we spent a lot of time talking about this, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but at the end of the day, that's kind of how I see it. So for 2020, we put $19,000 in an account to put back into the park instead of 25. That's a small price to pay to get out of 2020. If they have a banner year, we get more. And if they're not having a banner year, then they'll come back to us and say, here's the keys to that park. We couldn't make it work,
Let's hope that's not the scenario.
Which they won't.
It won't be.
Yeah. So not to say there's a lot to do about nothing, but money is not changing hands here. It's how much money goes from them goes to us to go back to the park. I was just trying to push us towards a motion. Commissioner Clark.
Being new to this, we don't put any money into this, Travis, besides this 19,000, which comes back into our
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
zero. No staff, no hourly wages, no nothing.
Okay. So this is money they've made. They pay to us throughout the course of the year. We hold it in advance to make sure it goes into paints, shingles, that kind of stuff, so the park looks nice.
No money's changing hands, we lose the budget. I'm giving money to focus to white sweat clean in this role.
Okay, I need someone to put that in the form.
And
Anyone want to make a motion for staff's recommended action or a different motion?
I don't really see where it would hurt to defer it, to leave the.
I don't think it hurts. I think it just comes back again, but I don't think it hurts anything.
I think 2020 is going to be around for a while with a lot of businesses. So.
You want to put that in the form of a motion, or is that a conversation?
Just a conversation. I can't put it in a motion.
I'm willing for anyone to make a motion on either direction.
I'll make a motion that we defer and let the manager wait until 2022.
Okay, I have a motion to defer and to wait and bring us back in 2022. Do I hear a second for that motion? I have a second for that motion. Okay, any comments, conversation on the motion on the floor? The motion on the floor is to authorize the city manager to not enforce this aspect of the contract, but to bring it back as another topic of conversation in 2022. At that point, we would see what kind of year they have next year, and then we could muddle our way through it a year from now. Any comments from the dais on the motion on the floor? Okay, down, so put our phone on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to item item 9. Now I'm confused. Item 9 on tonight's published agenda. We did make an amendment. So we were talking about the Champions Park operator request to be relieved of $6,000 of the depreciation fund that they put into that account. The motion on the floor would defer that decision until 2022, but would allow staff to not go to the contract and have to enforce that contract. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on that motion, all you need to do is dial the phone number on your screen. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. Let's begin with live comment from the chamber, and then we'll go to public comment. Virtual public comment.
Joy Glanzer again. It seems like back at the beginning of last year in March, we all thought it'd be 3 or 4 months and things would be fine again. And we had no idea we'd be a year down the road and still be facing these shortcomings that we are. So I'm not sure. And this January of 2021, where we are right now, I understand it's the peak of what it's been since the beginning. We never expected that. So I'm not sure why we think it's going to be better in 2020 till, January of 2022. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that it's impressive that the park did as well as it did in spite of the COVID being what it was. And so I think we owe them that little bit of gratification and deferring it, and forgiving it and starting with a clean slate. I would agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other live comments in the chamber? That's everyone with their hand up. Okay, so we have a motion, probably second on the floor. Remember, we are down one commissioner, so this is a 2-2 vote. The motion would die, and we need another motion in order to move forward. I don't really have any other thing to say before we have a roll call vote, except that these are our partners, and we want to try to make sure we're being good partners, however that ends up being. So roll call vote, Commissioner Farnsworth. I'm sorry, Commissioner Farnsworth, I couldn't hear you.
Yay.
Yay. Commissioner Norfleet. Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Clark. Okay, motion passes 3-1 with Commissioner Clark in dissent. We'll bring it back on, what's the time certain? I know it's 2022, January 2022. Okay, Commissioner Farnsworth, since you're virtual, I just want to make sure you understood what the motion on the floor was.
As my understanding, gets deferred until next year.
Okay, just checking. All right. That will move us. Thank you, gentlemen, for zooming in. We appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks for doing such a great job out there at the park.
Mr. Mayor, I'll
everything that's going on in the world. Richard, you're saying goodbye. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you.
All right. That's going to move us to the P&Z Historic Architectural Review Board compensation. I think I have on a note that Wendy's going to lead us through this conversation. Let me give just a little bit of history about the P&Z board, because it's kind of unusual for P&Z boards to be compensated. I think in your backup material you saw that there is no other city around that compensates. And just to be clear, the P&Z did not ask for this item to be in front of you tonight. That was not their request. They have talked about compensation, and they said they're volunteers. They do it out of community service, and they're fine with that situation. We have paid, I think it was $50 a board member a meeting in the past. And the reason for that was we went through a period of time where we really struggled to get people to be willing to sit on the P&Z. I think it's worth a conversation just to give us the opportunity to say thank you to them, even if we don't compensate them. But in the past 6 months to a year, that this commitment has become fairly exhaustive. I mean, we have some P&Z meetings that go longer than our commission meetings at this point in time. I think that there are all kinds of ways of compensating. It might be that we create small budgets for snacks, appetizers, that kind of a thing, coffee being brought in, something to show the P&Z that we appreciate what they're doing. I think that also we haven't particularly in the past couple of years had a hard time with applicants. But I would say that our applicant pool is relatively the same group of people. We don't often have new residents applying to serve. And I think that's, I don't know if compensation would help inspire some new people be willing to give up what is now probably about a 2 or 3 hour commitment every month, maybe a little more than that by the time you read the backup material and do some homework. But it's a relatively low cost to us, and it may. So I hope I didn't steal your thunder, Miss Wendy, too much. But if there's anything that I missed, go to it. I took it all.
All right. This is just meant to be a discussion item about that, just what you said about compensation for the Planning and Zoning Board and Historic Architectural Review Board members, as a means of, of recognizing their commitment and the hours that are put in. If you go to the next slide, it also is an opportunity to perhaps attract additional people and additional interest in serving on these boards, and at times possibly expertise in certain areas that is desired for example, on the HARB in historic preservation or something as written in your code. It's just something to be discussed, and we're looking for direction from the commission to see if that's something that they want to explore. In the past, per diem has been looked at and has been done from, like, in the next slide shows from 1992 to 1998, there was a $20 per meeting attendance. And then in 99 to 2013, it changed to $50 per meeting attendance. That's a regularly scheduled once a month meeting. And then as a means of budget cutting in 2013, that was stopped and officially repealed by ordinance in 2015. In your next slide, it provides the code requirements. The current land development regulations for the city state that the HARP, Historic Architectural Review Board, serves without compensation, but it does mention that the city makes available money for necessary expenses for the HARB. And just keep in mind that if the commission were to choose to provide per diem or any kind of compensation directly like that to the HARB members, we would need to amend that section of the land development regulations. Typically the HARB and planning and zoning boards, most, as you saw in the survey, they do not get any compensation other than possibly a meal or snacks or drinks during the meeting. The Planning and Zoning Board has the same requirement that the commission would provide for appropriations fees, other income as needed, just the same as for the HARB. It does not specifically state that they cannot receive compensation, since they had done that before. Next slide provides for the research that was done in January. The Florida Division of Historical Resources was contacted regarding their programs to make sure that if there was a choice to provide some compensation to the Historic Architectural Review Board, that there were no prohibitions to such compensation. And they said that their programs do not have any kind of prohibition to that effect. Also, like in 2019, in April, the staff did a telephone survey of local governments. You've about 13 different local governments, maybe 12 of them about our size, or 10. And then none of those did provide that, but they did do varying types of things to recognize their boards and their contribution, as you see in that survey table. And then also we did some research regarding various planning national forums, and it ranged quite a bit for compensation ideas and things that were done in other states and other jurisdictions, from no payment, drinks and snacks, reimbursing travel-related expenses, payment for training and travel-related, in paying per meeting for attendance, issuing checks monthly or twice a year. Now, notice the next slide, please. The city does currently provide for the cost of training, or if there was travel involved for that required training for the Planning and Zoning Board and Historic Architectural Review Board members. The staff is looking just for some guidance for your direction as to whether you wish us to look into this any more or proceed with any kind of a compensation for these members.
Thank
So
you,
if you have any
Wendy.
questions.
I would say that was probably the last issue that started this conversation, is that the HARB does not meet anywhere nearly as regularly as the P&Z. The P&Z meets every month like clockwork. The HARB meets when there is something in the historic district that they need to address. However, we have been asking P&Z members to undergo a lot of training and HARB members to undergo a lot of training. And some of these trainings are 3-4 hours long. And they're not getting compensated for it. Now, this time, in this age, they're able to zoom in, so they're able to do it at home, those kinds of things. But you're still giving up, an evening to listen to historic regulations for 3 or 4 hours. So, this really is just a conversation, a discussion. I think it would be nice to see something come out of this, whether it's, coffee and donuts. Nothing says thank you for work like being paid for work, but something here would be, I think, appropriate.
Mr. Mayor, how many people, how many personnel are on the planning and zoning and then the HARB?
There's 5 on the P&Z and there's 7 on the HARB. Correct. So the HARB, right, the P&Z 5 make up the core 5 of the HARB, and there's 2 additional on the HARB. And I would say the HARB.
So they're really 7 total, period.
Right. And the HARB meets, it really depends on whether somebody in the historic district brings something forward. So there's but maybe 3-4 times a year the HARB meets. It seems like a lot more because lately we've had a lot more stuff and we've had all the training. And if you have a new member come on, then you do the training all over again.
And Mayor, there is a requirement for the HARB to meet a minimum of 4 times a year. So at least that there's 4 meetings.
4 meetings a year for the HARB. P&Z, first of the month, every single month. Commissioner Northley.
I wouldn't have an issue with this. Would this be something that could wait and be brought up during the budget this coming year?
Any other thoughts, Commissioner Farnsworth?
Mute. I agree with.
We're not hearing you, Bonnie.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
I agree with Commissioner Norfleet. We should just wait until the new budget meeting or new budget period.
Do we want to direct staff to put this not in the budget, but bring it back up in the budget conversation to make sure that it happens? Is that's what comes out of this conversation? Staff bring it back during budget, bring back some options for us. We'll make a decision then.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't need that in a motion because this was just a conversation. Okay, that's going to take us. Are we done? Was that new 10? That was it. All right. So congratulations, folks. We are on to comments. We'll begin with City Manager, Mr. New.
Mr. Mayor, I like going first because I get to be the first one to say things like, happy birthday, Commissioner Clark. So now everyone else can say what he said, but happy birthday, Commissioner Clark. I think I already was turning 32 today. Mr. Mayor, as you know, we had a fantastic MLK Day celebration Monday a week ago at the MLK Center. Given the cold weather, and it was pretty nippy in the shade. It was nice in the sun, but in the shade where we were, pretty cold and COVID. We were socially distanced and masked for COVID. I thought we had a really good turnout. And in terms of event running, best our team has done, that's primarily Travis Parker and his team, and Amy's a big contributor. Thought they did an outstanding job this year. Mr. Mayor, I want to remind the commission that on February the 15th, we have a workshop scheduled. That's the third Monday night of February. It's at 7 p.m. regarding the expansion of the City Hall Municipal Complex. On the 22nd, our regularly scheduled meeting is going to be a joint meeting with the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners regarding the annexation conflict resolution process. I think the city attorney reviewed that with the commission a meeting or two ago. So there'll be a joint meeting to see if we can come to resolution on this process. If we can't, then I think we go to non-binding arbitration and on. And there's possibly two of these meetings if we don't come to resolution in one, and maybe just the thought of all those extra steps will really push negotiations to come up to some resolution. Mr. Mayor, we don't have dates for it yet, and we'll present that probably in February. We'll meet with Mariah Raines with the Florida Institute of Government and start developing dates for those community forums and for the commission workshop. Mr. Mayor, I'd like the commission and the community to be aware that we have a new permit technician who started work in the building department. Now, she's been there a couple of weeks now. Her name is Kelly Klassen. So if you're in the building department, you have an opportunity, stick your head in and welcome Kelly to the team. We have high expectations and hopes that she's going to work out well in the building department. And Mr. Mayor, associated with that, we have a brand new staff assistant in the fire department beginning today. So if you're ever by the fire department, stick your head in the door and say hey to Marcia Lee. She volunteered to move down there and work with some of the crusty old firemen and our crusty old chief. We give her, she gets bonus points for just being willing to take those kind of bullets. That's right, hazard pay. So say hi to Marcia the next time you're down at the fire department. We're excited to have her there. Mr. Mayor, last week, the Florida legislature began its 2021 session. It's going to be a different kind of session. I understand that the number of bills being introduced are going to be way down. There's very difficult to meet face to face, which means there's probably very little travel opportunities for us. Most of the meetings are being conducted virtually. I'll do my best to keep the commission updated, as we always do, about legislation that affects us either positively or negatively. Ask you to advocate from time to time when we think it'll be beneficial. Mr. Mayor, I handed out, I think all of you got an individual letter, and we also handed out a letter from Hitchcock's Foodway. It looks like this. And as you know, we've been reading in the news that Governor DeSantis has partnered with Publix to do coronavirus vaccinations in the state of Florida. And Hitchcock's has asked that the city of Newberry would transmit a letter, preferably under the mayor's signature, to the governor, asking that he would give the same consideration to Hitchcock's. So that'll be an agenda item on our very next meeting, February the 8th. Mr. Mayor, give you a brief update on AMI contract.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Mike? Back to Hitchcock's. Why
Sure.
do we need to wait to February the 8th? That doesn't seem like a very important request, and with the urgency to get the vaccine out, should we transmit that letter immediately?
Mr. Mayor, the only reason I would suggest that is it wasn't on the agenda for consideration, but it's completely within the commission's.
Doesn't affect our budget. It's just saying, hey, don't forget about Hitchcock's. Is everybody okay with me sending that letter? I got head nods from all four.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and get it done.
We'll get it put together tomorrow.
We don't want to hinder Operation Warp Speed.
Hey, that very good. Mr. Mayor, just the AMI contract, if the commission can remember back that far, we have been negotiating your contract for now, working on 8 months. And it has been all hands on deck, and all participants have done a magnificent job. We are down to the bitter end, and I have given so many drop dead deadlines to all parties. They're working very hard. I just saw an email since this meeting started that said, all right, it's ready to go back to census. We're hoping February the 8th, you'll be considering that. If not, it cannot be late. Well, we will have a special meeting if it's ready after February the 8th, because I wouldn't want to wait until March. But the numbers are lower than the commission anticipated and that staff anticipated. We've really dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, have a strong contract put together. And if the community will be patient with us, I still believe that we will have the best AMI system deployed in the state of Florida. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I know that there's been a lot of watching of this. I think back in early November, the commission authorized us to purchase cemetery property, or property that could potentially be used for expansion of cemetery. I got word today that we should be ready to close on Thursday afternoon sometime. So hopefully we'll be able to complete that transaction and acquire that property and move on to the next project for the city. Also, another request that's kind of been out there, the Tates, our neighbors here to the east, have asked the commission for some consideration on use of an alley. Staff will make a presentation and some recommendations on that. Working on the Great American Cleanup, that Commissioner Martin brought that forward. Jamie's working on that date now. We'll have something to you at likely our next meeting. Commissioner Martin also asked about the Department of Health's rollout for vaccines in our community and do we have a formal plan? And the answer is, I'm certain that we do, but the word we're getting from them is that really at the governor's office. As soon as we get something formal in writing from them, we'll push it out to the commission as an FYI, and if it merits a presentation at a city commission meeting, we'll do the same.
Mike, let me jump in there because I've been talking with Chair Cornell about that he's run a couple of town hall phone conversations, and Newberry is on their top of the list to have an area out here. We've been able to run the testing, mobile testing sites very well out here. We have sort of an established relationship with the health department. And so we've talked about Easton, we've talked about the fire department again, because the fire department has kind of a nice covered drive-through where you can go through. So hopefully it will work out and work out fast.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes a very extensive list of city manager comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Attorney.
Happy birthday, Mark. Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Happy birthday, Mark. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
They're going to keep coming. Thank you, ma'am. Let's start with Commissioner Farnsworth.
Happy birthday to that old guy.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Norfleet. You got to say it.
What he said, happy birthday.
Commissioner Martin.
Happy birthday, Mark. I'll say it again.
Commissioner Clark, you got to wish yourself a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mark.
I texted him this morning, so I'm good to go. I want to say thank you to Travis and Amy and everybody who put on MLK. It was beautiful. You guys did a great job. Every time I started to lift my voice in song, Travis cut the mic, which was probably a great idea. But they've got that thing down pat, and it runs really, really smooth. I did make a suggestion to the concerned citizens of Newberry. Our MLK celebration is kind of a joint effort. It's a Newberry event, and they take the lead on the programming and that kind of stuff. We take the lead on making everything else happen. But it seems to me that the whole point of Martin Luther King Jr. is to bring people together, and I'm not quite sure why Alachua County, Gainesville, Alachua, Newberry, we're all trying to host an event on the same day to talk about the same thing. And I'd like to see if we can't bring the whole county together to have one celebration that we can all participate in. I brought that up to the concerned citizens, and there was some interest in doing that. So we'll see how it goes. Everyone's kind of tribal on these things too, and they all want to have their own. But I think the point of the day is to figure out how we come together and have these kinds of conversations. So we'll see. Nothing may come of it, but we may be inviting you to a big county-wide celebration next year. In case you missed it, we declared the winner of the 2020 Christmas light contest. It's Mr. Mark Modis and family. If you didn't get a chance to go by and see his Christmas light display, you really missed something. This was so much fun, guys. I'm going to do it again next year if the people of Newberry see fit to put me back in this seat. Next year, I want to have an individual winner and a block winner, because it broke my heart not to recognize there's a block over in Country Way that if you didn't make it back there, everybody decorates. They have their own radio station. So I think we need to expand the competition to include a few more categories. So if you have the Christmas spirit and you want to help me work on that for next year, we'll make it a little bit bigger and better. But it was a lot of fun. The community had a good time doing it. This board voted on a commercial development economic incentive program, I think before Commissioner Clark was here, and we funded it this year. Now that incentive program, anyone who wants to come and build something, they need to apply. The first year we put that incentive program out, we had a lot of interest, but no applications. This year we have an awful lot of interest. We still don't have any actual applications to the program, but I think that we may have 4 on the table that are coming, that we're encouraged. We told them, we think you qualify, you should apply for it. Now remember, this board seeded that incentive program with $50,000. So, and every project is eligible for the full 50. So you may not be eligible for the full 50. That's why you fill out the application, and then we can see the square footage of what you're building, how many jobs you're bringing. You guys decided on some categories to award those dollars. I only bring it up tonight. If all 4 of those apply at the same time, then we may have to make decisions about either funding that program more to give each project what they potentially could be eligible for, or we may not. I mean, one of the projects may only be eligible for 8,000, another may only be eligible for 15. I just want to put that on your radar. We did have this conversation when we talked about the program. Well, what happens if it's hugely successful and we get a lot of businesses coming to Newberry because they want to take advantage of this program? So just put that in your back of your mind. You know, one of them may follow through the application, none of them may, all 4 of them may apply at the same time. All 4 of them may be eligible for the full amount, and we may have to make a decision about how we want to handle that. It's entirely this board's discretion how much they end up award. Even if a business could be awarded the whole 50, you may say we got 4 great ones, we want to split it up between. You may make another decision about funding it more, those kinds of things. So I just want to plant that seed in your brain. My last comment tonight, we had a moment of silence for the young man who died in a traffic accident at the beginning of this meeting, and I made the comment that he's not the first. We've had a lot of accidents here in the past year and a half that have taken some of our young folks from us. Some of you may have seen the video I posted on social media about 337. It's a dangerous road with dangerous curves. We have a lot of dangerous roads in Alachua County. We have a lot of dangerous roads in Newberry. I believe 337 is a dangerous road. It's engineered poorly, and it's not up to today's current standards. I believe 15th is a dangerous road. That chip seal without the setbacks with the trees invites an accident that, thank goodness, we haven't had yet. All that being said, and that's on either us or the county, whoever owns the road, to recognize when a road is engineered to a substandard level. We have a role in that, but every single driver on the road also has a responsibility to drive safely. And 337, as dangerous as I think that road is, when I take those curves at 40 miles an hour, I can manage those curves. Those curves at 60 miles an hour are not manageable and they're dangerous. 15th Avenue at 25, 30 miles an hour is a safe road. At 45, 50 miles an hour, that's an unsafe road. So I want us all to remember and recognize that we do play a part as government in making sure that our infrastructure is as safe as it can be. But there is nothing in a free country that will get us as individuals into a completely safe bubble without us being responsible. So we have to also take a role there as well. So please have conversations with kids about driving those curves on 337, about driving down 15th. And, just, they do. And we have an app that we're working on getting back that worked wonderfully well for me. Filled that pothole in the very next day. So maybe we can get that app going and we can get all those potholes filled right back in. And that concludes my comments. Public comment. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up for any virtual comments.
I have a question. Peggy Loy. Mr. Manager mentioned the meeting on the 15th about the renovation expansion. You said 7 o'clock. The website says 6.
Well, he's fired.
No, I had already plugged 6.
That's it. No. That's it.
No, we don't want him fired. Here's the website. But I had already plugged it into my calendars. The only reason I'm bringing it up.
Mr. Mayor, we'll follow up. I was pretty certain that we settled on 7. I think there was a question of one commissioner who has a hard time getting off work, and he suggested that it would be better if he could work full day, and the commission said 7 p.m. But I'll follow up with Amy. We videotape them all. We can pull it out and find out when the commission directed it to be.
Terrific. 7's better anyway.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of tonight's meeting. You'll put our phone number up. Dallas, if you'd like to call in and address the commission, we set aside 5-minute public comment time at the end of the evening. If you have something more controversial, more in-depth for us to consider, now would be the time to call in with that comment. All you need to do to comment is dial the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. Make sure you have the opportunity to do so. And don't forget, we have a slight delay between our in chamber and our live feed, which is going to expire right about